Jeff, can you hear me? Hey, I need to email one last document to somebody to print off for you and Justin to sign. Can you let me, I don't know who's there and who's easiest to print that off for you. Print off for you and Justin to sign.
All right.
Setting.
Hello. Oh, on my desktop. Hang on.
You had nothing on camera.
I'm logged into a different computer, so hang on one. Let me get there. What's that?
Not on mute, you know.
Oh, many phone calls going on
I'm here, but I can't get my camera to work. Where did I go?
Okay, we're ready.
Ready to go? Yep. Kristen, you there? Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Liz, I can see you. All right. Well, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Looks like we have everybody. We have a quorum. We can conduct business.
Just a comment on the public comment section.
Yeah.
For anybody that is watching us on the live stream, we would request that if people want to have a public comment, that they follow the procedures that we have in place, which is they contact us about 10 days in advance, and then we will schedule, we'll provide the information necessary for them to be able to call in and comment. We don't believe we have anybody that wants to comment today. We had a few that had expressed interest, and we had asked them to let us know so that we could provide them with the call-in information, and nobody has. But for future board meetings that we do via Zoom, if anybody would like to comment, and we'll put this on the website as well, you know, we have procedures, they can let us know, and then we'll provide them with the information to be able to call in during the public comment and be able to do comments, and then they'll go back to just being able to watch on Zoom.
Okay. Good morning, everybody.
Point of clarification, I believe we have advance notice if you want to be placed on the agenda as an action item, but anyone can participate in the public comment just by showing up. That's what our website says now. Has that changed?
That is the normal procedures. Unfortunately, unless they notify us in advance, we don't know that they want to comment, and we have to provide them with specific call-in information for the Zoom meeting to be able to get them into the queue.
Thanks.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's doing good. Hope everybody can hear us. Let's jump right in.
Jeff, can you hear me this morning?
I can hear you, Mark.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I've still just got a thing saying video preview and a thing going waiting on here. I don't know.
Yeah, we can see you. We can hear you.
Okay. So what's I've just got a it says video preview and a waiting clock going.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. Joe, do you know what he's talking about there?
I can't see anybody else. Kind of a background, but then it's like an add-in thing with it says video preview and a waiting thing going over my face.
Maybe it's maybe you don't have enough bandwidth.
Loosen them up behind the keyboard.
That's what I suspect. Heading up behind the keyboard.
So just a question. Since I couldn't get my mute unmuted fast enough. You guys are all in the boardroom. If someone shows up at the office and asks to come in to comment, are they allowed to come in and comment?
Yes, we could accommodate that. I'm guessing the people up front would call us, and then we would have to go out and get them.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, I'm concerned to have people in and out. I'm concerned to have you guys all in that room without masks on. Just saying.
Well, don't worry about me because I'm more than 6 feet away from them, so the rest of them are screwed, but I'm okay.
Okay, minutes of previous meetings. Everybody take a look at them. Any corrections, any comments, any questions?
One correction, I just wanted to have it noted in the minutes that I voted not to go into executive session in the morning.
I believe it's in there, Kristen.
No, the second one is, but the first one is not.
Oh, okay. Levi, did you get that? Anybody else?
I'm sorry,
Did we get a motion?
I got it.
Okay,
Thank
yeah,
you.
just so everybody knows, Michelle's taking minutes. I'm reviewing them and we're working together out on it, but she's the point person on minutes now.
Okay. Can we get a motion to approve?
Question. We're always so careful to have one person make a motion and then another person second that, and we record that. Is that usually reflected in the minutes, or is it fine just to say it was motioned and approved?
We used to reflect who made the motion. The board decided based on, I believe it was an NRECA training, to remove that from the minutes. That's, I don't know how long ago that's been. Liz, was that maybe your idea?
It was, I think Jeff and I and Mark all went to a training, and it was maybe a year ago, maybe something like that, year and a half ago.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
Yeah. So it's been about a year at least since we had names on the motions.
Thanks.
Carl?
I'll make a motion, but I have a question too on the emergency small business fund. The motion said the staff could specify additional requirements. Was that accomplished or not?
Do you want a second?
Carl, having a hard time hearing you. Can you speak up?
Carl, can you make a
I'll
motion?
second.
Second. Okay. We got a motion and a second. Further discussion, Carl, go ahead.
In the motion about the emergency small business funds, if the motion required or said that staff could specify additional requirements, I'm asking if they did or didn't.
Yes, we specified that the funds could only be used to pay past due electric bills, that it was, I believe, 80-20 split to be spent 80% in Grand County, 20% in Jackson County. They had to obviously be members of Mountain Parks. It needed to be related to COVID, that they were past due, and that any funds that they had not utilized at the end of the time period would be returned to Mountain Parks. And I actually got a report last night from Megan Ledeen, and if I can get it to come up here on my phone. She gave us a report that she has requested a third of the $30,000 donations. They have given out in Grand County almost $58,000. They have another $15,000 in request. In Jackson County, they've given out $8,000 of the $12,000 they've received, and they have a couple of inquiries within the last couple of days.
And the $30,000 increment, they don't have to come back and get our approval. We approved $90,000 in $30,000 increments without any question. When they run out of the $30,000, we give them another $30,000.
Basically, what they do is they provide us with a spreadsheet of everybody that they gave the money to, and generally a check comes along with that spreadsheet because that's how we post it to member accounts. And when they have utilized all of the first $30,000, she then sent me an email, and we processed the check, and I dropped off the check for her, and we sometimes I'll drop off a check and she gives us a check back to be able to post to members' accounts.
Any other questions, comments? We do have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. Attorney's report, Levi.
I don't have anything to add at this point.
Any questions for Levi? Carl?
The issue with the dilly docks, what is that?
Carl, yeah, what's that?
Dilly docks.
Any questions? We'll probably need to handle an executive session.
Okay.
Any other questions for Levi? All right. Mark?
Okay, you have my report. I'll highlight a couple of things on that, but two things from the last meeting that I did want to make the board aware of. Last meeting, we tabled two items, policy B10 and the past due accounts section of the tariff. The past due accounts, we have talked amongst the staff, and nobody is willing to claim that they actually wanted it to be on the agenda, and we can't figure out what it was that we were going to change. So at this point, we plan not to bring that forward until such time as we need to change that section or that it comes up again. Policy B10, staff is still working on that. We expect to make a recommendation that we delete that policy. It relates to three different sections of the tariff. The tariff actually covers that, and we don't believe that a policy is actually necessary. So we hope to bring that back in June with a recommendation to delete that particular policy. Moving forward to my report, under the solar update section of the report, have had a couple more conversations with the landowners. It's an LLC. There are 5 members of the LLC. We talked with them about indication of pricing. We have gone back and forth a little bit on that. Levi and I participated in a call with the Grand County manager and assistant manager yesterday to talk about special use permits, exemptions from having to subdivide the property. They gave us some direction, and they're very supportive of the process, but we will need some cooperation from the landowner because they will need to actually give us authorization, since we don't have a lease or don't own the property, to go through the special use permit process. There is a meeting of the Planning Commission on June 10th. We are not going to make that because tomorrow is the day that we have to have in the full application, and we don't have all the information that we need yet. So we expect that we will probably be on their June 24th agenda. Things seem to be moving forward at this point. I think we may have a sticking point and have some negotiation back and forth as to the value of the land, because at least 1 or 2 of the LLC members believe it's worth significantly more than we think it's worth. So we will continue to work on that. Also,
Question.
oh, sure.
In your report, you mentioned that the end of May, if we are going to complete this project this year, we had to have an order in. I noticed on Stacy's financial deal that it looked to me like we were canceling the fiber project totally and continuing with the community solar project, and I don't remember making that decision, or there's $2 million.
And we are not canceling the fiber project. We have gone back to the consultant, and what we did is we reduced the amount of money that was in the budget for the fiber this year, and we left $2 million in there. We could potentially go up to $2.5 million. And what we have asked the consultant for is phase 1. We were going to go from Winter Park through Granby to Grand Lake and possibly to Kremlin. And what we've asked them for is how much of the project can we do for $2 to $2.5 million, and basically change phase 1, and then we would put the remainder into phase 2. So we are still moving forward on the fiber project. As to the order of equipment for the solar, had a conversation yesterday with the contractor, and they believe that we are fine if we order in June on the panels. The racking is an issue, and they were trying to get confirmation yesterday, and obviously didn't receive it. Probably get something today, that if we get into the queue in June, that we'll be able to get the equipment in time to actually complete the project this year. But that is still to be determined.
I'm a little, I don't know if I'm confused, but the timing of what's going on with the solar project is we have to go before the county commissioners with the proposal before we know whether we're gonna own or lease the property because of the sticking points in the value. Is that the normal process, is to get all of this approved, subject to our obtaining the right to use the property? Is that the path we're taking?
You can do it either way. You can acquire the land and then go through the process with the county to get the special use permit. We don't necessarily want to sign a 25 or 30-year lease or buy the property if we can't actually use it.
Right.
So what we would do is we would get a letter from the landowner that authorizes us to start the process. We would work with the landowner to get something in place prior to going to the final step, which is before the county commissioners. And we would make any agreement that we have contingent upon us being able to get the special use permit and the exemption.
Did we look into the tri-state property? Any news there?
We did, but by the time that we talked with them, the board had already approved to sell it. We also, though, looked at it from the past perspective of, I believe it was a year or more ago that we had reviewed it, and it was cost prohibitive to get to build a line from where that project would be out to get it to our distribution system, and it wasn't necessarily well suited for a solar project based on some other, for instance, the Homeowners Association. We would have to go through them on at least potentially part of the land to be able to do that, and we thought it was unlikely that the Homeowners Association would agree to allow us to build a solar project around their development, which is high-priced homes.
There's another parcel of land out there where they used to have the ball fields. It's called Waterboard Downs, that's owned by Denver Water. I wonder if they'd be, we don't want water rights, and that's basically why they have the property. I wonder if they'd be willing to give us a lease or something. I know we've talked with them before. Are they still just adamant about not doing things?
No, I believe that based on some prior conversations, they're more than willing to allow us to lease the land and build on it, but they want a clause in it that says that they can require us to remove this stuff within 90 days. And obviously that doesn't work for a solar project. So we will still continue working with them. We have the possibility of another piece of property that somebody came to us. They're going to be building it's a, I guess, quasi-governmental agency. They're going to build a new building. They want to have it LEED certified, and they have some interest in having us put some solar next to their building. So that would be an option as well. I mean, from a logistical standpoint, it's not necessarily our first choice, but it would be something that could work if we need to go that route.
I just want to say thanks, Mark, and continue to explore the options.
Yeah, thank you.
We will keep pedaling and trying to get the bike across the finish line here. But if it goes too much longer, if we can't resolve some of these issues within the next month and a half, 2 months, then we will probably need to delay the project till next year, because we won't be able to start we can do a lot of the groundwork and putting in the wiring and some of the other things, and then just bring in, drive the piles, bring in the racking at the end and put that in. That takes about 2 to 3 weeks. And as long as we can get this done later in the year, we should be fine. But the issue is, at this point, we anticipate that if we get into the queue by sometime in June, the equipment will be delivered on site sometime in September. And so if it goes too much further, we're going to run out of construction time. Two other updates. Under the safety officer, I indicated that we had done some phone interviews, that we had identified an external candidate to be interviewed. We received notification from that candidate yesterday that he accepted a job with Yampa Valley, so he's no longer a candidate for us. We're going to go back out and repost to try and identify additional candidates. Of the others that we interviewed on the phone, they did not seem that they would be good fits for us. And so we're going to try and find somebody else, because this particular individual was highly qualified. I think that's one of the reasons that Yampa offered him a job so quickly. And then the last item, the board had action last month related to Kinza thermometers, and you allocated $5,000 for us to be able to acquire the thermometers, that we would provide or put together a plan to be able to distribute them. We have had conversations with Dr. Salinki, I believe it is, who is the Grand County medical officer, and she is willing to work with us to be able to distribute them. I have subsequently had a number of email exchanges with the Kinza company, and they were able to, we kind of went back and forth a little bit. I believe at the last meeting, Liz had indicated that the price of the thermometers were about $35 a piece. Because we are, of the number that we're buying, because of the reason that we're buying them, they are going to sell them to us for $20 a piece. And so we have about 260 of them that are on order, and they should be here in early June. And in between now and then, we'll be working with the Grand County to be able to distribute them to families that will be able to utilize them and provide the county with information related to trends.
Can individuals add on to this? In other words, let's say our family wanted to get one. We may or may not be one of the ones that are chosen. Can we pay for it ourselves and join in?
Well, we would not choose you, Dick, but
yeah, that's my point. See?
Luckily, we did 220 of the thermometers for this project. I ordered an additional 40 to allow employees or board members, if they are interested in acquiring one of these, to be able to get it. We actually went over the $5,000 because with shipping, we were over the $5,000, and the company will pick up the additional. I think it's between $200 and $400, and that's why we got the additional thermometers, is to be able to provide them to employees that were interested. We do have some employees that expressed interest in getting one, and then if a board member wanted one, we'll have 40 of them. And if we end up with nobody wanting them, then we'll just provide the additional thermometers to the county.
Can we reimburse Mountain Parks for the cost?
Yes, we would basically charge, if somebody wanted it, we would charge them $20 for the thermometer.
Carl? Doesn't it make more sense to provide these to some businesses, because of if they are going to reopen temperature taking employees at certain workplaces, that more data would be collected in that regard than just families?
I think it usually is a daily, we check your temperature every single day. You can do it with employee temperature too.
Yeah.
Carl, these
I
aren't
understand.
Carl, these aren't the type that you point at someone's head. You actually, they're oral. And so I'm not sure if you had one for a business, you'd have to constantly be sterilizing it. I'm not sure that
I
was.
thought it was one that you pointed and they read your, I'm sorry, my misunderstanding.
No, but that.
I mean, you're right. It's like, how do you get them out to families that will have a lot of interaction with, the kids might interact or they might interact, like thinking about the number of contacts that people have. How do you get the thermometers into the hands of those people who are having quite a bit of contact? Because that's probably where you'll pick up see the virus. And I think that's what Darcy will do, but also the vulnerable populations too.
And that is a good segue into what we are doing related to COVID. We are working now to, we will have a checklist for employees as we transition back to having more of a full office. We will have a checklist for employees for them to go over prior to coming in, and do you have these symptoms? Do you have a fever? We are also looking at acquiring infrared thermometers, which are basically what you're talking about. It looks kind of like a gun. You point it at someone's forehead, you press the button, and it tells you what their temperature is. Based on my weekly calls with the other Colorado CEOs, a lot of the co-ops are going to that as they transition back into having more people in the office. And so we will do that. We're still working out the actual plan of bringing back everybody into the office, and most likely have a requirement that people wear masks, especially if they come in contact with others within the office. Their temperature will be taken every day when they come in, and they will have this checklist that they have to self-certify that, you know, these are the things. I think that we have been extremely lucky. We have not had, we've had a few people who had some symptoms. They were related to the flu or cold. We have sent them home. They have quarantine in place. No real issues. We had 2 employees that potentially came in contact with somebody that did have the virus. In fact, in one case, it was confirmed that there was a virus. We quarantined them in place, and the employees came through it. They never showed any symptoms. They are both back at work now.
Can you connect this infrared thermometer to the data collection of Liz's program here?
I believe, and go ahead, Liz.
You could do that. It would have to be done manually, but somebody could set up the app on their phone and add all the employees. You wouldn't have to use the actual employee's real, full name, but you could just have an identifier. And as the employee is scanned, that information could be added in. And that app includes symptoms. So it asks you, do you have any aches? Do you have any chills? Do you have a fever? What else is going on? As well as just the temperature. So you could do, you could do symptoms too if you wanted, if it didn't become too burdensome.
Liz, can this application that they're looking to do, have they asked people to volunteer to utilize their cell phones to do tracing?
Carl.
Within this program, in other words, say I'm one of the volunteers and our family, I take my temperature every day. Is there any way to tie this into where I go with my phone so that they can trace this scenario in case I do get this or I do have symptoms? Is there a way so that this becomes a broader scenario within the community?
Dick, I'm not aware that they do contact tracing. Well, so but maybe they're thinking about that. But really what they're trying to do is just provide disease surveillance in a certain community to see what's going on in that community. But eventually maybe they would do surveillance, contact tracing, but that starts to get into a lot of privacy issues. And
well, you'd have to volunteer.
Yeah. All of it is sort of, privacy versus public health. But right now, I'm not aware that they're doing any contact tracing, but I'll go on their website and see.
Thank you.
And that concludes my report unless anybody has any questions about what I discussed or anything else that is in the report.
Any questions for Mark?
Of the 100,000 that we gave for Mountain Family Center, have they spent a good portion of that, or?
They're about between $37,000 and $40,000 at this point. They have helped, and I don't have the exact numbers. I'll send out the numbers to the board, but obviously the majority of the people that were assisted were in Grand County, but I think it's currently about a 70-30 split with the number of individuals that were actually assisted. 70-30 split between Grand and Jackson. Sorry.
But while we're talking a little bit about the reopening and safety, I just want to mention that I've been paying attention to the CDPHE site and the tallies of COVID and where the outbreaks are, because we hear a lot in the news that they're at the meatpacking plants and they're at nursing homes and prisons. And so I went through the list, and yes, there's a lot of that going on, but there are also some just regular workplaces like the Anheuser-Busch Distributor Center in northern Colorado, the King Soopers Bakery, the JBS corporate office, not the meat pellet packing plant, but the corporate office, an insulation company in Denver, Alpha Insulation, a bridge tournament. So it's, you know, we have to think about where the virus can spread, and it's not limited just to specific types of, you know, if you're outside, clearly you can also spread it. So and the other thing that I've been paying attention to is the studies coming out about masks. You wear a mask not necessarily to protect yourself, you wear it so that you don't spread the virus to others. And so, you know, you can say, well, geez, I'm not worried, I don't want to wear a mask, but you're allowing it to have a venue to spread. So that's my comment about masks.
Anybody have anything else for Mark? Okay, let's move into discussion action items. We do have a guest at 9, but we'll push ahead with the rest. So Mark, you wanna?
Sure. B is an amendment to the bylaws related to the education fund. Levi, did you want to speak at all to that? You have a copy of it in the packet. And Levi, oh, there he is. There he is.
Sorry, just trying to go back and forth between the CTO and here. I don't think I have anything to add. Any questions? We had discussed amending the bylaws to better reflect how we are holding the funds for unclaimed capital credits in the educational fund as opposed to a formal trust. That's what the amendments are aimed at doing.
Carl? Go ahead, Carl.
I noticed that you put in the bylaw that it was almost strictly for educational purposes. Does that change what we have done in the past? Because it was under my impression that we could almost use it for anything. In the past, we haven't, but we could. I know we've looked at possible geothermal site and other things, but reading this bylaw amendment or bylaw, it looks like it's only for educational purposes. Am I reading that right or not?
Well, Carl, it says for and/or public welfare of persons residing.
Well, and I don't know what public welfare means. What does public welfare mean?
Well, and then it does go on to say, or projects within the service territory of the cooperative.
Okay, so does that?
I believe that, at least based on our prior discussions, that the board has very wide latitude in determining how the funds are spent.
And I did not, the only thing I changed was I changed trust to fund. I did not change any other language.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I move to approve.
Second.
A motion by Liz and a second by Kristen. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, moving on to C, Project Thor and the fiber backbone. Kristen had provided an article to the board related to Project Thor and the fact that they had completed their ring. And then I had shared it with Joe and asked him to opine because I believe, and I don't want to misrepresent what Kristen asked, is that, you know, based on this, is it an opportunity for Mountain Parks to be able to utilize the Thor fiber project instead of duplicating that potentially with our own fiber backbone? Joe provided his perspective on that, and I sent that out to the board for the board to look at. So At this point, I guess I would start giving Kristen the floor to ask any questions, and then Joe can respond to those questions related to
Sure,
whether or
thanks.
not it worked for us.
I wanted to clarify, it's not my intention to ask, can mountain parks use the Thor project? I know there's probably security reasons and whatnot that we don't want to. My question is more for some of the co-benefits for communities. So my understanding, and granted, I'm a newer member of the board, you all have had many conversations before I got on. So this is partially like my request to bring me up to speed a little bit. But my understanding was that one of the co-benefits was that when we laid this backbone, there would be a possibility that communities could extend higher speed internet service to people who are currently underserved in the mountain parks territory, especially up in Jackson County and some of the more rural parts. So in looking at the Project Thor backbone, it looks like there's a similar intent, right, to bring high speed internet options to communities. Now, granted, like I understand, and maybe you can clarify this too, that our backbone project will not actually get internet to members. That would rely on third-party providers developing that middle mile or wireless solutions. But it looks like that's the same with Project Thor. So my question is more like, given that Project Thor is already serving Jackson County and in some of the parts of the county where we also are going to be going, is the value proposition for wireless internet duplicated a little bit by Project Thor? Like, why would people want to go with us as opposed to Project Thor?
Joe, you need to unmute yourself.
So a couple of points. First of all, there needs to be a pretty substantial wireless infrastructure installed by whatever third party would be delivering, and it's really the last mile that's the trouble for them. So there's 2 distribution points of Thor, at least in Grand County. I don't believe their Thor has Jackson at all yet. They do have plans, but they have not completed that phase. Now, Mammoth Networks does have bandwidth available in Jackson County, but it's purely a retail operation for them. We buy connection from them. The hospital buys a connection from them. I believe their Vista Beam buys connection from them in Jackson County. The biggest difference is, like I said, that infrastructure that's not there. So the hospital in Granby, I guess the proposed facility in Fraser, as well as the existing facility in Kremling, are the Thor points of presence or meet me centers or connection points, whatever you want to call it. The third parties that I've had communications with, it doesn't solve their problem. They still need a connection into Fraser, into Tabernash, into Hot Sulphur, into Grand Lake. And so they would still have to build a wireless infrastructure to distribute that from these points of presence. There may be some pricing advantages to Thor for these third parties, but if we can provide a transport mechanism, that benefit is really what our network will do for these third parties, as well as these communities along the route. Whether we become an internet provider, at least at this point, I don't see that as the direction that we're going. Of course, you also mentioned the security problems. Riding on a Thor network, you can secure your communication, but owning the transport mechanism is truly the way to go if you can.
So, who owns Thor?
Liz, you broke up a little bit. What was your question?
My question was, who owns Thor? And will they build into Jackson, or will they just lease from Mammoth?
So they claim that Jackson is on their plan. I don't know, with economic problems, even at you know, in the government economic problems, if that plan is being set aside. Thor is owned by the Northwest Cog. They operate it, they designed it. However, they contracted with Mammoth Networks to completely operate the network for them. It's
So do they own does Northwest Cog own the fiber?
no, currently it's a leased project. They lease everything from CenturyLink.
Okay.
Joe?
Carl, maybe you can answer this about Jackson County. Do you know if there's any towns or entities in Jackson County that have been in communication with Thor?
Yes, we had that discussion here, I think, and Joe can correct me if I'm wrong, but Mammoth with Project Thor has leased part of the CenturyTel line into Jackson County. Then Vista Beam has hooked onto that, but Project Thor came to us, or Mammoth, I think, came to us and wanted to invest in our backbone because they have I think, a 3-year lease with CenturyTel or CenturyLink, and they want to get away from CenturyLink, and so they would have been willing to invest in our project to have fibers in our backbone, but that never worked out. But we're getting better coverage in Jackson County right now because of the wireless and Vista Beam and Mammoth leasing, having a 3-year lease with fiber on CenturyLink.
So what I'm hearing is that with Project Thor, people who are interested in extending internet service out farther in our service territory may already have a potentially cheaper option to do that, so that we shouldn't necessarily expect that from our project. Is that a correct conclusion?
I think it's the opposite. I think that CenturyLink's pricing, it would be substantially more expensive. CenturyLink really, I mean, Mammoth gets good pricing because they're a huge consumer of CenturyLink's services. But they, as well as pretty much everybody else, the hospital and every other Thor member that is in this area, has already expressed interest in terminating those leases once they're done and utilizing our fiber for better terms, for better pricing, for a lot of different reasons. And again, it's the reach of the network that makes it different. I mean, there's 2 places we have a huge infrastructure to build, where if we go right by, we could let them set a cabinet or let them hang something on ground nearby and provide a connection in many more locations.
And I just want to say, as we talked about fiber and the fiber backbone, we talked a lot about that being an ancillary benefit, and the benefit being that we can have a more robust network, secure network, that our meter data, whatever distributed energy resources we put on in the future, that we can control all that stuff and have visibility into it. And we aren't having to rely on a project that, you know, I look at Project Thor, I'm like, okay, so they're leasing, or they have an agreement with another entity who then leases fiber from another entity in 3-year periods of time, which doesn't provide a lot of certainty as to what things are going to look like in 15 years. If we build this, we know we're going to have it in 15 years. It's still going to be operating, or even 25 or 30 years. We'll be able to do multiple things with it. So that's on that.
No.
Hey Liz, can you turn up your volume, your speaking volume? You're not coming through clearly.
You're on mute now.
My internet connection.
That's better.
What I was
See, if we had a fiber backbone, your internet connection would be better.
right. And so did you guys, could you hear some of that? Which was,
Yeah.
you know, I really think that as Kristen pointed out, there could be some ancillary benefits for third parties, but that, from my perspective as a director, really why we're going forward with this is for Mountain Parks Electric's use now and in the future.
Okay.
Dick, did you have a question?
Well, I was just wondering, Joe, has anybody looked at an overlay of where our backbone is and what backbone they have? Or are they just tied in basically to that big trunk that runs along the railroad that CenturyLink had? So in other words, that's their link, is going along that area.
Actually, it is. It doesn't actually go along the railroad. CenturyLink, for many reasons, doesn't exactly disclose the route they take. They will let you specify diverse routes, which Thor has done. So they do go out through the Moffett Tunnel, which we know that, and they do go out through or down Route 9 into Silverthorne and pick up a connection there. Beyond that, they don't tell you how it gets from the hospital here in Granby or the Middle Park Health and the hospital in Kremling. They
Well,
won't.
there's only one backbone that runs through Grand County, and that runs right along the railroad track. It was installed about 30 years ago, and it was done by Anschutz, I believe it's the predecessor, and that was the only property they had, and they laid it from Berthoud all the way along the railroad, all the way through Grand County. As far as going down Highway 9, I don't know when they connected there, but basically it followed the railroad. And that is the only place they have their fiber. Ours is gonna be similar, but you know, it runs a similar path, but it runs along the highway rather than the railroad.
They relayed the train run 2 years ago.
That's mostly correct. CenturyLink still does transition to different microwave links along the way. They have a big microwave presence up at Grouse Mountain. And so they bring in a connection from Mines Peak. And actually, it's my understanding after some of the research that I've done that while they're saying they're delivering a connection, it actually isn't part of that part of the connection that Thor runs on is actually not truly on fiber. It comes in over microwave from Mines Peak, and then it picks up fiber along the railroad and goes to Kremling. But there's a gap from Granby there that actually is a microwave link that CenturyLink operates.
Any other questions for Joe? Okay.
Okay, moving on to D, which is policy B13. Staff recommendation is that we delete this policy. This policy was put in place when we had members that did not want an AMI meter, that had an older generation meter. The policy does say that if for some reason your older meter doesn't work, that it will be replaced with an AMI meter. We're now all AMI, so this policy basically is void or null. So our recommendation, staff recommendation would be that we delete this policy.
I make a motion that we accept staff's recommendation and delete policy B13.
Second?
Motion by Carl and a second by Dick. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, moving on to item E, policy B14, the MPEI workflow procedures and work orders. You see in your packet, we have made some modifications to the policy, the strikeout in the red, as well as some additions in red there. The policy has been reviewed by engineering, operations, and finance, and this is what we would recommend the changes to this policy.
Any questions?
The only question I have is, I recall as we were going through the policies, we were going to make a decision as to whether or not the policies were public. What do people think about this one?
public?
of whether or not the policy would be available to the public. I think you could do that, but since most of these, the things related to work orders, if it affected a member, are in our procedures that are shared with the members. I don't know that it would be necessary to make this public. I don't know that staff has a recommendation either way. Scott, do you want to opine?
Yeah, I mean, the policy kind of dictates how we do our operation. And so, I mean, I don't have anything to hide from anybody. Certainly, if anybody asks about what we do, we explain it to them. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the business policies for the company, either you make them all public or you don't. If there's information in here that we want to make public, I guess maybe we should put it in tariff.
It looks like more of an internal process, this.
Yeah.
This particular one is because it's the way that work flows related to work orders with internally. And as I said, anything that would, so if Dick came in and wanted to do something and we created a work order, he would have the procedures that we would go through. We would explain how it worked on his side. This would just be how we handle it internally, basically how we, I would say, move the paper, except now a lot of it's done electronically.
Carl?
Scott, section T was deleted. Why was that in there to start with?
I do not know. That was something that was predated my time here.
Okay.
Is there any reason these should not be on our website? You know, my question is if this is the way we operate and this is how we function, is there any reason these policies and procedures should not be on our website if people want to look at it? That would be my question. Not should we, is there a reason we shouldn't? And we're getting more and more exposure. People question things more and more. What would be the reason not to put these out on our website for people to look at how we function? I don't know. I'm just asking that question. Is there a reason we shouldn't do it rather than we don't want to do it?
And I believe that part of the, and I will say advice or direction from Levi is that that's why we would look at them individually as they come up, because in a 2-year period, we will have gone through all the policies and determine if there is something within a particular policy that maybe shouldn't be disclosed on how we do something. I mean, there are policies, you know, related to a number of different things. I would say that with most of our policies, there's not necessarily a reason why we can't have it there. I don't know that really anybody's going to care, but it at least would be out and available publicly.
Yeah.
Levi, did you want to opine on that at all?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to opine on that in open session. That'd be something for executive session.
Great.
So back to Kristen's question, though, we really need to kind of, I mean, because some policies deal with our employees, so they might not want to be on. I mean, that's just something I think possibly could be an issue. I don't know. But so do we have to start picking and choosing which ones, like, we gotta flag this one as, okay, going public or not going public?
Well, and I think that was part of, as Kristen mentioned, that is part of the direction, is that as we go through these policies individually, the board would determine whether that policy would be available publicly. And
Hello, everyone.
as I said,
I have our guests waiting for us now from the Homegrown Talent Initiative.
okay, I think we're almost done with this one, and then we can go to them. Like I said, if the board is interested And, yeah, we put them down, it just, whenever the sun kind of comes, it makes it lighter or darker in here. So with this one, I don't think staff has as a recommendation one way or the other. It can be public. We don't have a problem with it being public.
I'd like to just defer that decision until we take up what Levi suggested in executive session, figure out either methodology or reasoning, and then as we review these, we can make that decision as we go along. So I'd rather than make a decision on the public part of it, I'd rather wait to the discussion with our attorney. In the meantime, I'd make a motion to approve the red line changes recommended by staff.
A second, there's one,
Have a motion and a second.
Wait, Liz, I think has a,
I just have one, and this is just my, details. Rather than the latest version of Mountain Parks Electric Service Construction, it's under G. That should be most recent, rather than latest.
she's referring to, item under G. The latest version of Mountain Parks Electric Service Construction Standards. And what specifically was the change?
Going from latest to most recent.
Okay, so, change the word latest to most recent. And staff is good with that.
Michelle, did you get that? Okay.
I'll amend my motion to include that change.
Thanks, Dick. Second. Thanks. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, we will go back to item A, which is the Homegrown Talent Initiative. And we have, I believe, is it 2 representatives, Joe? 3 representatives. I'm being told by Michelle. We will give them the floor, and they can do a presentation. I believe at some point they may share their screen and actually put some information up on the screen for us.
Frank is there.
So I'm not sure of the representatives that are here from Homegrown Talent Initiative who wants to start off, but go ahead and you have the floor.
Great, thank you. I am going to go ahead and share my screen here.
Pretty cool.
I think.
Pretty cool.
What is all this? Works if you know what you're doing. Usually where I turn to, it's usually where I turn to my wife and say, "Keeps coming."
You may not be able to do the full screen.
Okay, we'll just do it this way. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Bring it up to the top. Well, thank you for having us and including us in part of your agenda today. My name's Allie Williams. I am the new Homegrown Talent Initiative Coordinator, and I've got Frank Reeves and Darren Peppard, both of the school district superintendents, joining me as well today. So we just wanted to provide you with a quick update on Homegrown Talent Initiative. We know that you guys have heard a little bit about this throughout the year from Jessica, so we're just here to provide an update.
Yeah, hi everybody, and thanks for having us. I'm Frank Reeves, the superintendent of East Grand. A little bit about the Homegrown Talent Initiative, a little background, I guess, is we were approached last summer from the Colorado Education Initiative, CEI, about applying for this and doing it as a joint or a co-application between East and West Grand. For the past few years, we've been actually operating under a grant from the Daniels Fund to try to get our work-based learning programs a little more robust and growing. And we've had some success, but it's been limited. And so this Homegrown Talent Initiative actually ramps it up. It's almost like taking what we were doing and putting it on steroids and ramping it up. The Colorado Education Initiative is really the education branch of that, and they're supporting us through training, some expertise and partnerships. And then Colorado Succeeds is the other big partner in this. And Colorado Succeeds really, their goal is to tie school to business. And they're more on the business side and supporting the business side. So those are the two agencies supporting the Homegrown Talent Initiative and providing us, support both monetarily, providing us support in terms of training and expertise and heading us in the right direction. Behind all of that, the real funders of it are the Daniels Fund, the Walton Family Foundation, which is the Walmart family, and they are big in Denver, actually have a big agency in Denver, and the Gill Foundation. So those are really the funders behind the Homegrown Talent Initiative. But we're into our first year, and our first year was really all about planning and that it's been a great kickoff start, and we're hoping to implement by next year. So I think we'll go to the next slide.
And that's where I get to jump in. Hi, everybody. I'm Darren Peppert. I'm superintendent in West Grand. And so this particular slide really kind of is a good jumping off point for what the Homegrown Talent Initiative really is all about. And for us, it's about three key elements. It's about ensuring that we have relevance for our students in what they're learning. I'm sure you can all remember times in school where you were learning something and you're thinking, where am I ever going to use this? How is this ever going to be important to me? Work-based learning is really all about developing that relevance. It's one thing to sit in a seat and learn math or language arts or whatever the case may be, and that's important. But learning how it applies into the real world and also being exposed to different types of careers and different potential career pathways for students is really important. And it gives them an opportunity to be hooked in an area that can maybe be a long-term plan for them. So as the fourth bullet says on there, I want to learn real life stuff. And that's what we want to have our students have the opportunity to do, is just learn things that are relevant to the interests that they have, while at the same time exposing them to interests that they may not be aware of. The second piece is a word that we're certain was created specifically for the Homegrown Talent Initiative, but we've gotten real comfortable with using the word educonomy. So it's combining education and the economy. For a long time, education and the economy have worked, or business partners have worked in these two separate silos. And occasionally there's a little crossover, and usually it's because there's some need, financial support from that the school districts might be asking for, or maybe some supports that business partners might be asking for. But the concept here is to actually grow Grand County long-term with the talent we already have here by working together as opposed to working in separate silos. That's getting everybody involved. And that's where the third bullet, or the third key element, which is engagement, comes in. That's getting our students, our teachers, business partners, community members to all buy into a system where we're not two separate school districts. We're not, a whole bunch of different individual business silos, but rather we're one county choosing Grand County to work together to grow that edge economy going forward.
So we knew by, I think, March, we had explored a lot of different avenues of what work-based learning could look like. And we have about 20 to 25 people on our core Homegrown Talent Initiative design team that had been working with us this last year. And of course, we had started to engage with the community. So we knew we were in need of some really concise, clear messages in the form of a vision and mission statement. And it sounds like you guys have recently done this. So Jessica offered her time to run the HTI leadership team through a workshop to identify what those are. So our vision, where we want to be, why we want to do this work, is to inspire students to create their own path. And we'll do that by connecting school, community, and the future economy. The mission, what we do, and how we do that, we want to leverage the community and school partnerships to allow for students to be exposed to, explore, and experience current and future educational pathways and career opportunities. And if we're doing all of that right, students will have a clear direction upon graduation because of the opportunities to explore multiple educational and career pathways and the relationships they've built within the community along the way. She also helped us identify some clear overarching goals, which of course came with some objectives and some future states so that we could create pathways to success towards these goals. And Darren hit on a lot of these. So the innovative pathways are really, we broke it down into K through 12 and then the high schools and then higher ed on different multiple pathways that allow for that exposure, exploration, and career experience that will allow students to think about new opportunities that they hadn't thought about. The Educademy part of that, schools really becoming an integral part of our local economy and culture. You know, this has to be just as much business led as it is educational led, and we have to have some sustainable framework in order for this to be a long-term success. So that's really what we're talking about here, as well as all the points that Darren had hit on. There's a lot of stakeholders involved, so we need to make sure that we're aligning, supporting, and developing them both internally as our HTI design team, but then also within the community. We need to make sure that we understand what our business needs are in order for us to come alongside, plug students in potentially in a work-based learning opportunity, and really provide value to our business community. And then of course we need really great effective marketing and communication. This is a brand new initiative, although some of the components of it might not be brand new. So our messaging, our branding, how we're bringing our community up to speed and including them through the process is going to be really, really critical to the success.
Okay, so kind of talking about what the processes look like. As Frank mentioned earlier, we had been working our way through some of the design around work-based learning and having, you know, isolated pockets of success, but we really needed to have a system that allowed us to have a universal process to not just target individual little groups, but really how do we make this thing something that we're truly engaged across the county in. So the HTI process really was a successful piece. As you can see along this timeline, this really began, like Frank said, we were approached last summer about applying for this grant. In September, we put our community teams together and we spent 2 days in Breckenridge going through just kind of the initial stages of identifying what our current state is, what we would like to see happen going forward, and what is ultimately the future state that we want to be at a point in time. An interesting thing kind of took place as we went through this, and I reflect on being in Breckenridge in late September, and the design team that we had there looks considerably different than the design team that we have now. And one of the most important elements was actually adding Allie. We were very fortunate to be able to add her to lead our process. But as we went along, we were trying to, you know, start to build some empathy, start to build some understanding throughout the county around why work-based learning is important, not just for our students, but also for the future of our county. We had an opportunity in November to go to Canyon City and spend 2 days there. And Canyon City, very much along the same model, but many years ahead of us in the process, gave us an opportunity to see what might that look like. And Allie mentioned in the previous slide that we need this effort to be just as much business driven as it is driven by the schools. And actually in Canyon City, the primary driver of the internship program is a business leader in the community. They've developed the handbooks and everything around internships and those types of things in partnership with the school, but very much following that business lead. So that gave us a lot of direction and a lot of inspiration around what this might look like. We had an opportunity in January to host the HTI team up here in Grand County. We did an evening event in Granby at River Run, and then we spent the better part of the next day with the group over in Kremling. And at that point, we brought students onto our team. Each district brought 8 students into the conversation, and our students really started to reshape this for us. It's one thing for us and for business to come together and have those conversations, but our students really need to have a powerful voice at the table. And the students that we were able to bring in absolutely brought that for us. Over the next month or two, we started to just do some small tests of ideas we had of how this might work going forward. We got some positive results. We got some results that told us, okay, go back to the drawing board, which was good. That's what we were looking for. And then in early March, which seems like a year ago, but in early March, we were at St. Vrain and had an opportunity to spend some time at their innovation center, again with our students. And that was where we really started to put the key components that Ali will talk about in a minute, that are our implementation plan together. At this point now, it's start putting it all together. We've submitted an initial plan, gotten some feedback, and actually tomorrow we have to submit our final implementation plan. And I think that's what Ali will talk about now.
Yeah, so this plan is due tomorrow. It really is the evaluation of our year's work, but then also our plan moving forward. And CEI and Colorado Succeeds has asked us to look at our first 90 days, our first year, and then our 3 to 5 year plan out. So this slide really focuses in on our first year, and based on our site visits that Darren just described, and workshops and trainings and discussions within our community, I think it really became evident to us that focusing in on developing and building out our internship programs was the right thing to do for many reasons. One, it's really going to allow us to build those deeper relationships within the business community and come to the business community to understand what their needs are and how we can provide value through this type of work-based learning. It obviously allows our students to be exposed to explore and really experience some careers that they might be interested in. And then through this process, we'll also be building out curriculum that's just going to come around and alongside the internship program that's going to allow for more exploration and more exposure. And we're thinking about this from K through 12. This has really been focused in the last year on the high schools, but we see this program trickling down all the way to kindergarten and really creating a language for us to utilize around work-based learning and career exposure and exploration. So this slide just outlines how the implementation or the internship program will tie to our goals. And I kind of just highlighted that briefly. Now, one thing we are thinking about is when we decided the internship program was going to be what we focused on, this was prior to COVID hitting. And so we are completely sensitive to the fact that this has affected our community, our economy, and our business's ability to potentially partner or maybe partner in a different way. So part of our plan is looking at how COVID has affected our economy and not knowing what next fall will look like in light of COVID. We're kind of building out a plan, outlining it from, you know, if students can't be out on site and businesses are still in recovery mode where they are unable to partner as much as they would like to, then that might be more of a school-led program where we are utilizing virtual tools for maybe virtual job shadows and zooming in a panel of professionals to discuss their careers, that type of thing. It might look like we are allowed to place some students on site, but mostly keep in schools and while maintaining that social distancing guideline. So we're thinking of virtual projects that maybe students could partner with a mentor or a business partner and work through remotely, and have some really great ideas around that already. And I'm going to look forward to reaching out to our business community over the summer and understanding what maybe some more of those opportunities look like. And then ideally, you know, COVID's not even a part of the conversation anymore, and we're able to place our students on site and really deploy the full internship program like we would like. Students on site, alongside with professionals learning firsthand about those career opportunities.
So part of this presentation is brought on. We have 3 MPE employees, or I guess 2 MPE employees and 1 board member that are on our design team. Kristen and Jessica and Michelle are all with us. Our design team is made up of both school personnel and business leaders. And we felt like Middle Parks was probably one of the key members to get on that because of, you know, how widespread you are and certainly covering the whole county and what you do for schools. And so that was a key. Jessica is part of our leadership team, which is basically our administration, our 2 principals, the 2 superintendents, Allie and Jessica. Jessica's played a key role in leading a lot of our planning. MPE has hosted a few job shadows this year, and some of those short innovation plans were centered around mountain parks and going to mountain parks and learning more about the various businesses. And I think that's one thing our kids are really finding is being a lineman is a great job for mountain parks, but that's not all mountain parks does. And that you can get a great job in mountain parks and be an accountant. You can get a great job in mountain parks and be, you know, have a business degree. It's not all about electricity. That there's plenty of opportunities there, and so our students are really learning that. Going forward, we really want to, when we talk about the edge economy, I picture it as we're tearing our walls down. We've always built walls at school that keep our kids away from the community, and we really want to, you know, tear those down, so to speak, in terms of our kids are out in the community and our communities in our buildings, and our kids are really learning what it takes to run a business, to become an entrepreneur, to just learning the opportunities that we have within Grand County. It doesn't mean we're going to keep all of our kids here. We'd love to. It doesn't mean they're all going to go away to college and come back, but it does mean that they're going to know that there are opportunities here for them to stay in Grand County or come back to Grand County, have a family, raise their kids, and be contributing members. And so that's really our long-term ultimate goal is 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we have a whole bunch of students that are graduates from West Grand or East Grand or Middle Park High School that are back here and they're raising families and really contributing to our economy and continuing on. So with that, I guess, Darren and Allie, if you don't have anything else to add, we'll open it up for questions.
I think we're ready for questions.
This is Dick Zeef. I have a question for you. With the virus going around and we have distance learning taking place, has this created any opportunities for you to involve the parents? You know, in all of your presentation, I see the professionals, I see the education, I see the students, but a lot of times, if you can get parents involved or have an interest in this, it goes a long way towards motivating the children. Have you been able to take advantage of the distance learning that we're going through now to involve some of the parents in the community?
Dick, that's a great question, and I would answer a yes and a no, which is kind of like everything we've done with distance learning. We've had some great success with you know, parents really becoming involved and working directly with teachers, working directly with administrators to motivate their children to support them in, you know, obviously at home, they're the ones doing the heavy work. Our teachers are working their rear ends off to provide material and do it as much support as they can, but it's those parents doing that, the heavy work. And we've had some really great success with that. And Allie, if you'd go back a slide, and we've had some areas that it's been frustrating. I think as we look at the unknown, which is really, you know, what we're looking at over the next few months in terms of our recovery, that has really raised its head more and more, is how do we involve families? One thing we have discussed in our design teams is many of our parents are somehow tied, you know, in Grand County especially, to business, and working both of, you know, kind of both angles of that. The other group that we haven't fully addressed that is in our really 2-year plan is really getting to that retirement and second home community. And there's just so many experts. There's so much opportunity for our kids to learn about, you know, all kinds of professions that we need to reach out and really start building that kind of a spreadsheet of what opportunities are out there for our kids. Great question, Dick.
Yeah, and if I can build on that just a little bit, I think, you know, Frank definitely captures that very well. He mentions year 2 in our plan, and another part of that year 2 in the plan is then pushing this down into our middle schools to get more exposure early on for our kids, beginning at, you know, 6th and 7th and 8th grade. I think, Dick, that's a really, really great question. And what it makes me think about too is, as Frank said, we have so many of our parents who are involved on the business sector, and the role that they have, fortunately or unfortunately, had to play in supporting distance learning at home, I think is going to help in the long term of the business portion of this project, understanding kind of what that education side looks like. We still, on the education side, need to learn more about the business portion. And that ties another piece of our plan in, which is eventually externships for our teachers to get them out and get them exposed and engaged in the community with all the different facets of business that are out there. It's a great question.
Other questions?
I don't have a question, I have just a comment. I think most people in the world now appreciate teachers. When you have to sit at home and educate your child, I think you realize how difficult a job it is. And just thank you guys for what you do.
Well, thank you, and you're exactly right. You know, there's been a few silver linings, and I think that's one of them. Our teachers are really, you know, just like our frontline people, our teachers have really been heroes in all this, and what we asked them to do, I shouldn't say what they were asked to do, but what we asked them to do was completely change everything you've done in about 2 days and make it work. And we know there's been speed bumps, and we know it's a struggle, but our teachers are doing everything they can to you know, comfort our kids and make it right for them. Hopefully, and fingers crossed, we have our kids back in our buildings next August.
I just have a comment. I want to thank you all for going after this grant and doing this. I think it's great for the community and for the students. I'm going to try to speak more loudly. And I do think there are some, I mean, this is a brutal time for everyone, but I do think there are some silver linings. And I do think that, you know, we talk about fully recovered, sort of getting back to where we were, but I think that how we do things, that this pandemic will forever change sort of how we interact and how we do things. And it is a transition period, and your educonomy has been trying to create connections and break down the barriers between the economy and the education. And now we have this new set of barriers, and the students are in a really unique time to think about how they transition into this new way we're going to organize ourselves and move forward in the time of a pandemic. And I think having them imagining that right now within your structure is just, I mean, it's perfect as far as positioning them in a place where they can succeed and we can succeed. So thank you.
Thanks, Liz. I was just thinking about that the other day, that really we're now requiring almost every student, especially our high school students, to be their own entrepreneurs, because they're entering a world that nobody knows. We've always known for the past, 15, 20 years that kids are entering a world where the job they have probably isn't invented yet. But now they're entering a world where nothing is invented yet. And so that entrepreneurial spirit, really, we need to make sure that thrives in our kids.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, in some ways, it's like, it's so daunting that, oh my God, you know, where do you start? In other ways, because there isn't an incumbent way of doing things, it allows far more flexibility in how you answer questions.
I think, yeah, that's absolutely correct. I appreciate you saying that. And, you know, I mentioned earlier, you know, getting our students' voices at the table, some of the things they brought forward, you know, we've been trying to figure out how do Frank and I share programs across districts, and our thinking, we just couldn't quite wrap our brains around it. And our kids came forward with a completely different plan. And now with the response we've had to have with the pandemic, in essence, we've kind of been able to test out what does this distance learning look like, and how do we share kids across teachers, across the districts. And I think that's another one of those silver linings is, you know, we're looking at the potential of sharing a construction program across 2 districts, sharing an ag program across 2 districts, and being able to do it from distance. And we got an opportunity to learn, and it came from our kids.
Yep.
Right.
This is Carl. I represent a different area in Mountain Park's service territory, and I appreciate you giving this presentation, and I'm totally in favor of it. I think it's a good deal, but North Park School District in Jackson County is interrelated with West Grand and East Grand, and in many different ways, and it is part of Mountain Park's territory. And you just talked about sharing and everything else. What is the possibility of including the North Park School District into this program sometime in the future? Maybe there could be some ideas there that haven't been thought of now, but like I said, it's part of Mountain Park's service territory.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would tell you that while we haven't to this point had that conversation with North Park District, I see it as a very good possibility. You know, being able to share students from distance is, you know, not something that necessarily had been done for a while, but at this point, we see a lot of great opportunities. Our district alone, you know, we partner with North Park on a couple of things. Have had a couple of North Park students come and run for our cross country team. So I think it's absolutely a possibility.
Yeah, Carl, certainly. And as with any, at least in the education world, as with any grant, one of the goals of that grant is to grow the program, and not just keep it isolated. You know, if these 2 schools can be successful, or these 2 school districts can be successful partnering, then how do we grow that? And so that's certainly, you know, on the I wouldn't even say the back burner, that's on a burner, to always look at how do we grow this and make it successful in covering a wider net. So certainly I see that opportunity.
Well, thank you for that. It's important to me to, you know, that we be a regional initiative here, and, you know, spread the wealth. That if students are going to stay in the area, whether they work in Jackson County or Grand County, they're still in the area. So one question for you on the side of that, with homeschooling and distance learning and all that, what kind of technological issues have you had to provide material and everything to all the students from the school district?
That's a good question, and it's been one of the more interesting challenges that we've had. In both of our cases, you know, we scrambled quickly to get Chromebooks out to students, but you know, an issue that we certainly have in rural Colorado is broadband availability, and you know, we were not immune to that. I would imagine probably North Park wasn't immune to that either. We scrambled and were able to get hotspots through T-Mobile out to quite a few folks. worked with Visionary Broadband in Kremling to be able to get some folks connected. But we still have 2 or 3 families that just simply because of the remote area they live in, even with a hotspot, they can't get cellular service. We can't get the broadband service to them. So we've had to pivot on that and, give their work out in packet form, which not that the, going as quickly as we did to online is perfect, but, having the packet work is even less than what we want to see because they're not getting, the video instruction from their teachers.
Yeah, I would totally echo that. I have I'm looking in one of our employees' offices right now, and it's our reporting specialist that does all our reporting to the state. And yeah, she lives north of Parshall in an area where there's no cell service, so even a hotspot won't do. So they've brought their kids in here. They're getting paper, doing those things. We don't have many families like that. We do have some. I will say in terms of the partnership and building that, and it's funny because when we talk about this around the state, they're shocked that 2 school districts partner on anything. Usually it's a competitive process, and people are shocked. But our tech, our IT people, including North Park, I'll bet they talk at least once a day between West Grand, East Grand, and North Park in trying to make sure that our kids are getting what they need. We've shared Chromebooks, we've shared hotspots, we've shared just knowledge and technology with each other to make sure that hopefully all of our kids are getting what they need. I'm a little bit afraid of if we truly go to a distance learning, because right now we're actually calling it crisis learning and not distance learning. Our kids aren't learning as much as they should. Our kids, if we have to go to something permanent in the fall, we've got to step up what we're doing quite a bit in terms of academics. And that will change the look at things, and we'll have to be prepared for that. And so, but they've worked together really well. Our tech people have too.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you for sharing this with us. We very much appreciate it, and I will thank the folks that represent Mountain Parks on the various organizations within this effort. And if there are things that you need from us, you can either communicate through Michelle, Jessica, or Kristen, or and I know that Stacy did the finance class at the high school here.
Yep.
We're willing to support you in any way that we can.
Mark, thank you. And again, thanks to Mountain Parks for not just supporting this, but all the support you give to all of our kids. It's fantastic, and it makes a huge difference in their lives.
And I just want to really acknowledge Jessica and Michelle, who really have been driving this for Mountain Parks. Thank you guys.
Yeah, they both have been very key members of the team, and we really appreciate you guys sharing them with us. And I'll echo what Frank said. Thank you for all the things you do to support our school districts. We really appreciate your partnership. And thanks for giving us the time today.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Okay. We're going to take a 5-minute break. It is, let's be back at 9:41.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
That's not really 10 minutes, is it? All right, we got everybody back. I see some names up there, but no faces.
Mark, you look way too relaxed. You look like you're in a spaceship.
You have to take your mute off, Mark.
He's just talking away.
Mark, you're on mute, so you need to take the mute off if you want to talk. It should be in the bottom left of your screen.
Now he's gone.
No,
Now,
there he is.
I've-
Okay.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, I've still got this waiting deal. This video preview is the center of my screen. I can't really see anybody else. It's in the background. I can't get it. Won't turn it off. It won't X out.
He's photographing himself. He's seeing himself on his screen.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. I don't know how you change that.
Actually, I believe, Mark, if you go into the top right of the screen in the corner, there's options there for you to change to like a little checkerboard or the speaker view.
Yep, they're not active.
Oh, okay.
Because I can't get this video preview off. It just says join without video, join with video, and it just the waiting sign's been going the whole first part of the meeting.
You should choose join with video.
I know, but it's inactive. I hit that blue deal, and nothing happened. That whole screen isn't active, and the screen behind it's not active. I can hear you guys and see you just very briefly in the background. I can't get rid of this damn video preview. I just keep seeing this ugly bastard that watches me shave every morning.
Okay, we will move on to item F, which is tariff section 20212, which is the proposed electrify everything tariff, also known as Rider EE. This is related to the Rural Electric Savings Program, and it is the mechanism whereby people that participate, there will be a charge that is added to their electric bill that will pay back the funds, the financial assistance that's provided to them. One change that we need to make is on page 2 of the tariff under section 5, the second dot which says 2% for solar projects, that should say up to 2%. Part of it is that when we were looking at this, we looked at a number of different interest rates, and we segregated it between different functions. And so with solar projects, we had initially done 2%, but what we determined was, depending on the type of solar project, the interest rate would be up to 2%. So it could be 1 or 2. And with that, I will stop and let anybody ask any questions they have related to this tariff section.
Mark, do you think it's wise to lock ourselves into any interest rate for the 10-year period under the circumstances we are in now?
We have to, one of the requirements of the program is that we have to specify interest rates. We have the ability to go up to 5%, and we can, as we go throughout this, we can change the interest rate if we want to. In this particular what we would need to do is just change that in the tariff section, but we are required to identify what the rate is.
Any questions for Mark? So we need to approve this, Mark?
Yes.
Mark, do you need an amendment to what you just said, or we're just gonna assume that that's in this if we approve it?
When someone makes the motion, you would I'd make the motion to approve tariff 202.12, electrify everything, as amended.
I have one more question.
Yes, Carl.
Under A, availability, we talk about, if an existing building is deemed unlikely to be habitable, then down in, new and existing structures, we have it at sole discretion, MPEI can determine a property ineligible. Then we talk about the public safety or health code. Do we want to get into a situation where we're telling somebody that their house is not habitable or being that kind of a judge, or should we go by a building inspector or something like that? I mean,
Well, part of this is to, because this is at the discretion of Mountain Parks as to whether or not we do the loan, that is to give us flexibility. Obviously, we are not home engineers, building code, and so, but what we would go and look at is, let's say that somebody has a mobile home that is 65 years old, and they want to put solar panels on top of the mobile home. We would probably require them to do some additional work to show that that the home was going to be habitable for the 10-year life of the solar panels, because we don't want to put that on there and then have them not be able to pay the back, because Mountain Parks will ultimately be responsible for paying back the money regardless of whether or not the member pays us.
okay. And that was my point. Do we want to put ourselves in that position, going to a 65-year-old motorhome or mobile home and saying it isn't good enough?
And I think that we need that flexibility to be able to say, sorry, but, we're not going to make the loan for this. Now, they could then go and get somebody to say, the home will last for another 40 years, and then we could revisit the decision.
Carl, I think we can also rely a little bit on solar contractors there. I don't know of any solar contractors that would install on a roof that they don't think will last for the duration of the solar project. That's one of the first things that gets inspected when they do a site visit.
Anything else? Can we get a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
We got a motion by Carl,
Second.
second by Kristen. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, moving on to item G, and that is misprinted. It's not the heat pump agreement, it's actually the Electrify Everything agreement. This is the agreement that Mountain Parks will sign with the member in order to make this program work. Now, one of the things that I do want to bring up is, because it is included in here, the heat pump. A requirement of the REST loan program is that everything has to be able to pencil out basically within 10 years. So what they pay for the loan, whatever device or upgrade that they do has to pay for itself in 10 years. Currently, the heat pump that we have as an option for them to do is it does not pencil out with the current economics. What staff is going to request, and this would be a separate motion, is that Mountain Parks provide a rebate of up to $550 per ton for the heat pumps. Tri-State already does provide one, but with the Tri-State rebate, it gets us to about 12 to 13 years, which means that it would not be eligible for the program. So one of the things, if we're going to leave heat pumps in this program, is that we as Mountain Parks would need to have a rebate in order to make that work within the 10-year period required by the REST loan program. So with that, let's start with the Electrify Everything agreement. That is under G, and are there any questions that we can answer?
Would you add the $550 per ton into that into G, or?
It would not be part of the agreement. It would be a rebate that goes along with the other rebates that we have. But in order to keep the heat pump in here, we need that rebate or we'll have to remove it.
Just a comment on this, and I totally get why members are solely responsible for choosing the contractor or manufacturer for the work. My comment is it would be helpful, I think, if we were to provide some guidance on how to vet your contractor. That would be really helpful, I think, because people who are getting this stuff done on their homes aren't really experts, and giving them some questions to ask, I think, would make sure that the program runs better and the quality of work that is a lot better. I know that in the solar end of things, there have been a few installations that people have been talked into that maybe could have been done better if the homeowner or property owner had known questions, had a little more inkling of what to ask the contractor. And I want to point out that those contractors were not local contractors who did that.
And I think that we spent a lot of time with Levi on this, and from a legal perspective, if we provide advice, then we potentially are liable. What we can potentially do is gather information and make it available on the website as to, from either RUS or other sites that, things you might want to consider when buying a heat pump, or things you might want to consider when, doing energy upgrades at your residence. We could provide those resources, but I don't think that we want to provide any actual advice to the member about what they should or should not do. We have talked about trying to identify contractors that we could maybe provide a list of contractors. The problem with that, of course, is if they choose one of the people, insurance companies that, if your car was going to be fixed, they used to say, okay, this is a list of people you could take it to. They stopped doing that because if somebody is on that list and you get your car fixed by that person and it's not right, then they go back to the insurance company and say, well, you provided me with this person, now you need to make this good.
Right, I totally understand that risk. I'm just thinking, what are some basic things? Ask for references. Do you have any other installations in this area? And then getting some, recommendations from those websites talking about, there are all sorts of trade organizations, heat pump trade organizations, solar trade organizations that provide guidance. But making that easily accessible for our members as they try to go through this process, I think we just want to have good outcomes. And it's going to take one or two crappy outcomes and the program.
I think there's actually a list that was put together by the state of Colorado for one of their home energy upgrade programs that has qualified contractors. And I remember when I was looking into this, at least a couple of them did do installs up in Grand County. So one resource we might be able to point people to is here's the vetted state list of contractors for energy efficiency programs. These people do heat pumps and these individuals work up in Grand County.
Right, and as you said, I think that we can provide educational materials of things that you should consider, questions you should ask, links to resources like that for our members. What I don't want us to get into is some things that we've discussed in the past is that when we sold things, and I can't remember, I think it was Rob that shared the story, that we sold compact fluorescents. Well, people would bring them back and say, you sold me this and you said it would last for 2 years, and it hasn't lasted for 2 years. We didn't even know whether or not they bought the compact fluorescent from us. but we still replace them. And so that's part of the reason why we got out of selling some of those things. So I think that it is our responsibility to provide, some education for the member, but I would be extremely careful in having our people make any kind of recommendations as to what somebody should or should not do. We do, of course, with Rob and Chris, offer home energy audits, and that could be, something where we say, if you do the audit and then these are some things that you could look at, that would be a resource, and then we could point them to, the list of state-approved contractors, that type of thing.
Any other questions?
One correction in number 12, first sentence, second word from the end.
The into?
To billing.
That 12 you're talking about, Carl?
Yeah, we need to put a space in there.
Oh. Can anybody want to take a stab at a motion to accept the Electrify Everything agreement?
So moved.
Got a motion by Kristen. Second by Justin. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, so then I guess, under, we'll say G1, we would ask the board for a motion to create a heat pump rebate of $550 per ton.
So moved.
A motion by Liz.
Second.
Second by Carl. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
All right.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and we've got all of the marketing materials ready for this, and so we will look to roll this out in June. And I think that this has the potential to be a very good program for our members. Liz, you had asked me some questions directly about RESP and Solar Cares versus this. I don't know if you want to discuss those now or.
It doesn't matter. We don't have to discuss it now, Mark. I just, some of the logistics, I was like, I'm not quite sure how this is going to fit within the EE tariff, but we don't have to do that.
Okay.
Hey, Mark, could I interrupt for a second?
Yes, Rob.
You had said we'd roll it out in June. Actually, because of the tariff, we're going to have to provide notice, and you want to introduce things at the beginning of the month. So I think we're looking at a July 1 go live date.
And that's why I have Rob, because he keeps me honest and corrects me. And it will take us some time to, what we have been doing with the last couple of things is we have posted them in each of the newspapers, and we'll do the same thing with this. And so it probably will be July 1. Thank you, Rob. Okay, moving on to H, the special meeting that we had on May 5th, 2020. At that special meeting, the board passed a motion related to intervention in the tri-state docket related to the contract termination payment, and also gave some direction related to the solar project. We need to have a motion to ratify the actions taken by the board at the May 5th meeting.
That was where we said we'd write a letter to PUC so we could get information?
Well, we actually intervened in the docket at FERC.
At FERC?
Yes.
Without taking sides?
Right. We are neutral at this point. I believe that there may come a time as this process moves forward, and it will probably be a somewhat lengthy process, where we may have to take a side one way or another, but for now, we are neutral. We have not taken a position on either side, and what we are doing is we are receiving the filings that are made by all the parties, and in fact, in your call to order under the board documents, the very last part of it, you now have the documents that have been filed through, actually, I believe that some were filed yesterday, so you may not have all of them, but those documents are available to the board to review. And I will tell you that the first group that were put up there, there were about 300 to 400 pages. I read through all of them. It's some interesting reading. There's a lot of duplication with the different parties in their filing and the issues that they raise. But it would be, I think, helpful to just understand what the different parties are saying.
This has nothing to do with this other request that came through from Tri-State.
This has nothing to do with that now.
We address that today?
We can address that under new business.
Okay.
I'll move to ratify our decision for May 10th.
Second. So a motion by Justin, a second by Carl. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries.
We were one of only 2 other co-ops that did this besides the Florida and United, right? Or if more?
No, Nebraska, in our PPD, they intervened. Wheat Belt intervened. San Miguel, San Isabel, La Plata, United, ourselves, and I believe that there were others that were talking about doing it but did not. Now, there are some that intervened and they took the supportive side, but that intervention was done prior to ours, and so we don't necessarily have those. Levi, I don't know if you can say, but one of the other co-ops that you do represent did intervene as well. Highline?
I'm not aware of that. Not in the, we're still talking about the contract termination payment methodology?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that they had intervened.
Nope.
Okay. So, at this point, that's what we think.
Levi, did any of your other co-ops intervene in the first filing about FERC jurisdiction?
I believe that there are some that did intervene in that. Yes.
Highline did.
When we talk about under new business, we'll talk about the tri-state request, and I do know that there are some co-ops that are looking to participate in that request. That would not be an intervention. That would just be a comment. So we voted, right?
We did.
Okay, moving on to I, Tri-State representative at the annual meeting. I sent to the board members Tri-State's updated date for the annual meeting, which I believe are August 3rd and 4th. And we are required to designate someone to vote representing Mountain Parks at the Tri-State annual meeting. The fact that Carl is our representative to the board does not mean that we have a delegate.
Don't we have that schedule that delineates who represents us at some of the annual meetings? We have that flow chart.
I think this one's picked every year.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
So this one is not part of that? Okay, I thought it was, that we had a representative and we had a delegate, but I'm not sure.
Well, I think before it was canceled, we had somebody picked.
Well, no, we had it on the agenda to pick somebody, but then they canceled it, so we never selected anybody.
Who's planning on going? It's in Dick, can you go?
If they're gonna have the meeting, if not, I do it online, that's not a problem.
I don't think the annual meeting will be online.
Well,
I
don't know.
In April, when they were going to have it, I believe Kristen had said she was going to go. I think Liz was going to go. Dick, Jeff, Carl. So at least in the original one, we had a number of people that were planning to be there. I don't know with the change in the date to August 3rd and 4th, and it's at the same hotel, the Interlock in somewhere. Broomfield, yeah.
I'll nominate Dick to be our representative. Second.
Have a nomination for Dick.
Do we need an alternate, or
Is that,
would you be going, Mark, or can you be the?
I will be going, I would assume that I could be the alternate, but I mean, at other things I can be the alternate.
You prefer not on this one?
No, I would be happy.
Doing?
what's that, Kristen?
What is this person going to be doing? What are their responsibilities?
Vote. They are our person that votes on issues related that Tri-State brings up and represents mountain parks.
So are we going to have like a discussion as a board to decide how Mountain Parks wants to vote, and then whoever is the delegate doesn't matter, they vote by what we've agreed to consensus, or are they just like choosing how they want to vote? How is this done here?
Well, I think that we can discuss the issues and give them guidance as to how we feel that.
We don't know what those issues are yet.
Yeah, we don't know.
They could come from the floor.
Those issues might come from the floor, right?
Well, what issues are out there right now that we think are going to be brought up at that meeting? Do we know? I mean, the meeting was already supposed to have happened, and so I would guess they would have been in April meeting.
Liz, they had put out an agenda, but they hadn't specified issues at the time that it was canceled.
And a lot of issues have occurred in the meantime.
Yeah, there has been obviously a lot of activity at Tri-State in between the April meeting and now, or prior to the April meeting and now. So what I would believe that we would see is things that they have on the agenda, much like the NRACA meetings, the region meetings, that they would have certain things that would be on the agenda, but as I believe it was Carl that mentioned this, things can be brought up from the floor, and so there may be something that the board has not considered that may come up for a vote.
So what do their bylaws speak to as far as what can be changed by members at the meeting with no notice, bringing up issues? I mean, what could the members decide at that meeting? I mean, I guess that's just a question based on their, like, I think about our annual meeting and I think, okay, if a member shows up at our annual meeting, stands up, makes a motion, can the rest of the members vote on it? And would it change our bylaws? Would it change our policies? What sort of things are we talking about here?
Levi, do you want to take this one or that question?
So is the question about what can be done at the Tri-State annual meeting?
Yeah, well,
I don't think you can change the bylaws, but I don't know for sure. I'm not going to know everything that can and can't be done at the Tri-State annual meeting. Sorry.
I mean, could you add a member, disband?
I doubt it. I doubt it, but I don't know. I imagine that adding a member or changing the bylaws or articles of incorporation would need to be noticed before the annual meeting, but I don't know that for a fact.
I mean, could you give me an example in the past? What sort of issues came up out of the membership at Tri-State, Carl?
I couldn't hear.
She said, could you give us an example of something that may have come up out of the membership in the past?
I was just going to comment on that. Most of the times, any voting issue that Tri-State knows about is brought to the members' attention. But a lot of times what happens at the annual meeting is somebody will make a motion, or Tri-State will recommend a motion, but then amendments to that motion or changes to that to that motion are made on, from the floor at the meeting, and they are voted on at that time, and they can change the whole meaning of the issue that's being brought forward, so.
Can members make resolutions? Like, could our representative make a motion, or do they only come from Tri-State?
No, our representative can make a amendment to the motion, or change the motion, or whatever.
So I would expect we're gonna get an agenda from them at some point.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
And-
we did with the last.
Right.
But we haven't seen anything yet. All they gave us at this point was the notice, and then they kind of gave what I will call a bare bones meeting, time, basically time, said this will occur at this time in this room, and this will occur at this time in this room.
Well, hopefully that, we get that in time, and that, you know, we have a meeting prior that we can talk about that agenda. Will that work?
As long
Okay.
as we have
Do
the
you have a
opportunity to discuss what's being voted on at the annual meeting, I don't much care who's the representative. I just want to make sure that, you know, we all have the opportunity to weigh in.
Exactly. So we do have a motion to nominate Dick by Justin and a second by Carl and Mark as the alternate. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, you're it, Dick. Mark, also on here, this letter I'm looking at, it's asking for, who our Tri-State board member is, certification of election to Tri-State board.
And I believe that, and I haven't, this is my first time around with this particular rodeo. I believe that we have to certify our representative every year. And it came up in April, but we didn't certify it because the annual meeting didn't end up happening.
Okay.
And I had talked with Tri-State, and I said, do we still have to do this? And she said, well, when the annual meeting is rescheduled, then that will come up again. So Carl is our current board member. We have to, the board has to recertify Carl or certify somebody else.
We made the decision back in January of who's our representative, and that's good until next January. So
we just have to certify it.
We just have to certify that that is the case, yes.
Okay.
Hey, what did we do in January?
in January, we decide who our representatives are to different entities. Like I'm a Western United, Carl is Tri-State. That normally takes place in January of each year.
Gosh, I don't remember us doing that.
I wasn't at the January meeting. I'm saying that is normally when it takes place. So there's usually a chart that lists that. If we never changed it, then the chart is what it was the year before. And I don't know where that chart is.
Well, I agree that in January, we certified that Carl was the Tri-State representative. But since I've been on the board, there've been two different dates. One is, and I think this was maybe the first or second year that Tri-State asked for that at the beginning of the year. When I was first on the board, what we did was after the annual meeting, we voted on the officers and then also on the representatives to the different organizations. And then that would carry through to the next annual meeting.
Yeah, I think you're correct, Liz. That's,
Tri-State never did it before.
I think you're correct on that, yeah.
Well, I think
But for
there's a
annual
little-
meetings,
we don't have an annual meeting. We haven't had an election. So, I mean, the point would be that if there was an election and like next year there's 3 people up for election, if none of us get elected, we'll probably need, there'll probably need to be a motion to appoint different representatives. So,
I can't hear her.
she said that we probably need to do it after our annual meeting in case somebody new comes on.
Right. Okay.
And
That could be adjusted, but normally it's the January meeting
No.
We dissolved, remember there's the piece of paper that had who's gonna represent us at
Right.
NRC? We dissolved that because it was always changing, so we decided to just appoint somebody before each of those happened.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Cause we
But
ended up
that, I
having
wasn't at
somebody,
the January meeting, so if that's what took place, yeah.
we did that maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. We got rid of that piece of paper that said, if you go to the cassette.
So as these meetings come up, we
Yeah,
elect someone.
that's what I,
Yeah.
I'll try to keep track of it.
Yeah, no, but I think you're right, Liz. And so what is our proposed annual meeting date?
June 11th at 4 PM.
So that following board meeting, then we'd have those elections, correct?
I think that's what the
Or-
bylaw.
Yeah,
For
for
all the officers.
all the officers and the trade associations in tri-state.
Yeah, that's what I seem to remember
Yeah.
from last year. It was like the first meeting I attended.
Okay. All right. Move on to engineering report.
Okay, you have the report. If you have any questions, look and make, Scott is available to answer questions.
Any questions for Scott?
I had one. The Rome project, they're complaining about, our add-ons and our costs. The 45% markup on materials, is that a normal markup? I don't remember us having that type of markup before, and are they correct in what their assumption is, Scott?
No, they are not correct. We've applied that markup on the materials for quite some time. It is a cost that we assess in order to provide for operating the warehouse. And so I tried to explain that to him, and he kept going on that it was a margin, and I told him that it was that's not true, that's not the case. And we agreed to disagree.
If they want to buy their own material, it's subject to your approval, correct, as to what's acceptable?
Well, we actually let them purchase their own conduit for this project. So they're complaining about markup on transformers and volts and that kind of stuff. Going forward in the future, we will be providing and installing all material, and so there will be no option in the future for them to do that.
That's after Rome, or is that after phase 1 of Rome? What about 2, 3, 4, and 5? How's that gonna work?
2, 3, 4, and 5 will be done under our new business plan.
Under our new business plan where we do everything?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And
You're
I would clarify that this is not a markup, this is recovery of overhead.
I understand that. I was just curious as to what their problem was.
Yeah.
And I would say that we've, as a board, looked at this in the past, at what it costs to actually run that warehouse and have that material available and order it and make sure it meets the specs we need. And there's a cost associated with that overhead, as Mark pointed out. But we have talked about this as a board and looked at this. And I think we're all in support of what the staff is doing.
So I saw something on there about charging stations at the ski areas. I was curious. I know we've talked about that a little bit. Does that indicate that's going forward as a Mountain Parks initiated project, or is that something that the resort's doing themselves?
No, I believe that's the Mountain Parks project.
Yeah, Chris and Rob have been working with the resort on doing that. We would do it under the grant that was provided by Tri-State. However, the resort wants to do some things differently than what we're proposing, and they have suggested that if they move forward with that portion of it, they will pay for any additional costs associated with that.
Could you talk just a little bit about the SCADA points?
What SCADA points were you referring to?
It says Gabe and I participated in a conference call with Tri-State regarding.
Oh, yeah. So So we have a couple of SCADA points that we get from Tri-State. We acquired quite a few of them when we were in the process of deploying the SCADA system. The majority of them we don't need anymore. However, the connection that we have with Tri-State, they're decommissioning, so we just have to find a different way to get that information. The information's available, we just have to get it a different way.
Okay. A communications issue.
Mhm. Yep.
Thank you.
Carl?
Scott, is the issue with the Fraser Solar Farm resolved? So it's producing the same as Whiskey Hill or not?
It is resolved, and we are also in the process of working with Joe to get a internet connection to the solar sites, both of them, so that ISI can monitor the production, and then they can let us know if there's a problem. Currently, we don't have any visibility.
But the Fraser is producing comparable now then, correct?
Yes, it is.
Good.
We received a permit from the BLM for the fiber backbone. Are there any other entities we need to receive permission from that we haven't yet, Scott?
Yeah, I don't believe we have anything from the Forest Service yet. I think we're getting close with Arapahoe, but we got White River, we've got Route when we get into phase 2 that we're still working with.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks, Scott.
You're welcome.
Rich, we have Rich's report. Are there any questions for Rich on the operations or safety report?
Nothing. We do need a motion to approve the safety report. Somebody's willing to do that.
So moved.
A motion by Carl and a second by Dick. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Congrats on hiring Doug.
Yeah.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, you have the finance report from Stacy. Are there questions for Stacy?
I only had one. How come we're doing so well if we're not selling any electricity? I mean, that's what we hear, that everything's down, we have to worry about this and that, and the month looks pretty darn good. So I was just curious if you have any insight into that.
Because Stacy's really good.
That works for me.
So it's a mismatch in the month. So the tri-state bill came in for March, and it's quite a bit less. And then we have these cycles that we bill, and they're posted in March. So cycle 1 is reflecting the 1st of February to the 1st of March. So it was, the revenue is reflecting prior to really to the pandemic hitting, and the cost, you can see a significant drop. So April will be a really good tell. I'm working on that now, and things don't look as great. They don't look as bad, but they don't look as great. Yeah, it's misleading in March.
We had a green power meeting, and that was one of the questions that the members of that committee asked. And one of the comments or thoughts that we have is really our big months are winter months. We're in shoulder season right now. So it's a little hard to tell what's going to go on, how big the impact is going to be based just on April usage. If we were looking at maybe usage on December 10th or early December when it's cold, we don't have many people in town, and we were to extrapolate that out over that period, the winter months, then we might actually see how bad it could get. My other comment is I think there are quite a few people sheltering in place in our territory right now. who might not be willing to shelter in place in December and January if nothing is really operating. You know, it's pretty nice up here right now compared to some other places, but when it's -20 or -30 and the wind's blowing, there's nothing to do, they might choose to be elsewhere. So we'll see.
One other thing that might be notable, yesterday, the Winter Park Chamber of Commerce canceled all of their summer events. So there will
I was
probably be,
waiting to hear. I was waiting to hear if that would happen.
yeah, that happened. The resort too.
And Rocky Mountain Rep has canceled their season.
Yeah. So Dick, hopefully I answered your question. You'll also see in my board report the comparison of kilowatt hours used. This is the daily, thanks to Robin, Scott, and Joe, the reads that we get from our meter data management system with all of our meters aggregated. And an overall difference, just comparing it to last year, we see a 5% average drop through May 3rd. So you can kind of follow, and I also put in here per Liz's request to Rob some weather data. So you can see the weather definitely affects the less sales or more sales, kilowatt hour sales. But overall, this is a good comparison. So I'm seeing 5% drop in kilowatt hour sales. We'll see how that transposes to numbers in April.
Have we noticed any flattening of the curve? Are demand charges potentially not going to be as peaky?
Mm-hmm. The whole usage changes in the system, but when we just got the power bill yesterday, our demand charges are less. Now I need to compare it to billing and usage of those charges because it's not we aren't mimicking how we bill our members exactly how the tri-state bills us. So there's a little interpretation there of how things are going, but this meter data management will definitely help me interpret it as we bill and get further in the month. We had one cycle bill that we billed so far, and Tuesday we'll have cycle 2. So I'll have a good idea then.
It's the two other things besides just usage really are, risks to the co-op that I see. And one is just whether or not we're losing the small commercial accounts if they're just going away. And I'm curious if you've seen much of that. And then the second thing is the delinquency. Are those increasing? Are they staying? Or can we not tell yet what the delinquencies kind of look like? So, Stacy.
We can tell losing a lot of small commercial, especially right at first, especially now. Is it going to be permanent or are they going to recover? Not sure. On the flip side of that, our 17,000 meters out of almost 21,000 are residential.
Right.
So residential, it's actually down a little bit, which is overall, but some of the full-time people up here, all of their usage is up. So that tends to be helping compensate. We're looking at any small powers that come off of ACH. We aggregated Sandridge bill. We're paying close attention, being sensitive when those members call us asking for rebates or asking for a delay in payment. The Grant Foundation's really helped kind of mask some of those right now. I don't know if mask or help pay for those bills, but we'll see what happens.
With the schools closed and ski areas closed and most of the rec center closed, I mean, that's going to lower usage within our territory overall. If you have all your large buildings not being utilized, and pardon? I was just saying that all the schools are closed, the rec center's closed, the ski areas are closed, nobody's utilizing the buildings. And that would explain overall a drop in usage. People at home are not going to make up that difference.
Yeah, and I see that you can see too with my board report, total drop in usage 5% so far. Is that a cause for alarm? Cause for awareness? Will it continue? Will it be less? It's better than I thought it would be. honestly, because last year was a good year. So has our base load just increased? Weather patterns a little bit different, but they don't vary drastically. I don't know. Time will tell here.
It wasn't more, and I'm really like, you know, I know that someone asked for 10 or 20%, kind of look at stuff. Sorry. But, you know, I was like, I would be thrilled if all we had was a 10 or 20% reduction. I mean, I expected way, way worse. And it's early and it's April, March.
Yeah.
So
My initial projections to staff, just right out of the gates, let's look at 10% all the way up to 50%. I thought we could be within the 30, probably 30 to 40%, but
right,
not yet.
And
Stacy,
for what
didn't
it's
we
worth,
have,
our larger customers don't have as much, they don't pay as much. So, you know, we make technically more money per kilowatt hour off of our residential customers.
Yeah, we do.
Stacy, didn't we have a large customer, Confluence Energy, come back online using electricity?
They're actually using a considerable amount less of electricity right now. We're watching that one daily. They're online, but they're using a lot less. I think we can talk more in executive session confidentially in regards to their what that usage looks like. But
yeah, I just, you know, our meetings are on YouTube now. And I think that we have to be really, really careful about mentioning or identifying members.
One thing that I will say is that I have sent communication to the board about some, what I would call seriously delinquent accounts and the steps that we took related to those. The good news is that virtually all of them actually paid or made a payment arrangement. We have had some that possibly came close to being disconnected, and we've been able to work through all of those at this point, so have not had to disconnect anybody.
yeah, I have to give kudos to my team. They're on the phone, and I put in my board report, let's be compassionate but firm on collections, and collections are like a roller coaster each week, and it helps have a Mountain Family Center and Grant Foundation. But Amanda and Lindsay and Amy and Sarah and all the girls up front are doing an amazing job calling compassionately, talking to people, being a little bit of a sounding board at times, but collecting past due bills. So collections are okay right now, mainly because of them and their effort and compassion, and being able to have some tools to refer them to has helped as well.
Any other questions for Stacy? Thanks, Stacy.
Okay, you have the IT report, and Joe's available to answer any questions.
No questions for Joe? Thanks for off the hook, Joe.
Joe, I don't know what you did. You must have done a great job of explaining. Okay, we'll move on to.
Wait.
Oh, sorry.
Joe, the email that I got about you transferring over emails to personal from Mountain Parks, I've received a couple of spam emails from Jeff about credit card stuff, and I didn't get that before until after you did this, or what has occurred with that, what you did or didn't do?
I was getting those before Carl, just delete them. Yeah, I don't think it's related to anything that that he did.
And I
just received one also.
And I just got one from, not only do I get them from Jeff, I still get them from Greg Norwick. I just got one from Greg.
Typically, those emails have nothing to do with the person. Like, it's just someone who set up an account on any server anywhere and called themselves Greg or Jeff or whoever. I will add one quick thing. If you do want your email set up on a personal device, reach out to myself or Adam Walker here. I've already notified him of that. We started to do instructions, but with so many different devices, it became a real chore. We were going to have to do 7 or 8 different kinds of instructions because devices have slight differences in how you set it up. But if any of you would like it on a personal device so that you can keep track of those throughout the day, I understand that the iPads can be a little inconvenient at times. Just let us know and we'll help you through that.
Joe, do we need to bring you the device or?
Probably not, but just be in front of it and be on and give us a call. I think we can typically walk you through it.
Okay. All right, thanks, Joe.
Okay, moving on to the Human Resources and Admin report. Are there any questions for Jessica?
Okay.
We're looking for another IT specialist, I saw, on somebody's report, I can't remember.
Yes, we have one that has announced retirement, and we are working through a process to replace that individual.
Any questions for Jessica?
Just well done bringing the 3 new employees, Bethany, Doug, and Amanda on. Good job.
Thanks. And thanks to Rich and Stacy for all the work you guys put in and the patience. It's been kind of a nightmare, but we got through it. So it's good. I did want to tell, for those of you that don't know, I am pregnant and I'm due at the end of July. So everybody in Mountain Parks knows,
Say
but
congratulations.
You may say congratulations.
Congratulations.
thanks.
Always ask first.
So I came up with a plan with Mark to try to balance some, good time at home with the responsibilities at Mountain Parks. So my plan is to only be out 100% for about a month. And then I'm going to be doing some remote work, I think, to try to catch up, focusing specifically on the insurance changes and helping the company through that. And then with the performance management compensation program being brand new, focusing on that as well. So I'll be taking off 3 months, but it's kind of, I'll be coming back remotely and then in office part-time to try to better support those programs. And that's all I have.
All right, thanks, Jessica. Rob, you're up.
Any questions for Rob?
Nothing?
I have
Okay.
one thing I need to ask. I apologize. At the beginning of the meeting, I was working on getting the live stream link on our social media channels, and I may have missed the discussion you had about our annual meeting. Mark, did you talk to the board about that?
We did not. I was waiting for you because you're so much better at it than I am.
Okay. Well, Mark and I have been discussing this for a while and how we were going to do the annual meeting. And initially we had envisioned having the annual meeting where we could have a live stream interactive piece along with some pre-recorded videos. This is something we've never done before. I don't think most co-ops in Colorado have done this. So we had to investigate the equipment required to pull that off. And so we found out the equipment is back ordered and we will be unable to have it in time for the annual meeting. Well, we don't have an election this year, as you know, and our only official order of business really is to approve last year's minutes. And so our recommendation for the annual meeting would be to sort of mimic what Poudre Valley has done and just pre-record our presentations and not have an official annual meeting and just delay the approval of last year's meeting minutes until next year's annual meeting. So as of right now, that is the plan. We do know what equipment we need to go ahead and do live streaming with switching back and forth between a live camera and pre-recorded material and making it more interactive. And so we will have that ability to do that in the future, but we are not going to have it in time for our June 11th meeting. So that sort of ties our hands on that interactive piece and trying to have a 50-person quorum virtually online to do that interactive piece. So I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that. Mark, anything to add to it?
Well, the only thing is that we are going to solicit questions from our members, and at the end of the live streaming of the pre-recorded message, Rob will be asking any questions that we receive, and I'll respond to those questions. We will put a deadline on that. If we receive questions past that deadline, then we will post the responses to those on the website. We want to give members the opportunity to be engaged as best we can, and if they have specific questions about things, we want to be responsive to those. But as we worked through this process, it became increasingly unlikely that we were going to be unable to do anything with anybody in person. And so we believe that this is the best option that we've got at this point.
Bob, I had one question. I see the residential time of use rate ad coming up in the June issue. Does that mean it's going live in June?
It actually went live in May. Rob sent out an email and we had a soft rollout. What we are doing is that we have a few employees that we have put onto this to make sure that everything is working the way that it's supposed to. So far, everything has worked well. We will have the ad in the June CCL. We also have some other things that we'll be doing to promote it to the membership.
So when can we start telling people about it?
You can tell them now. It was live May 1st. We finished our notice in all the papers. And so we did the soft launch like Mark talked about on our social media. And I believe I put it on our website too, but June, we're going to more aggressively push it. And like Mark said, we wanted to make sure that everything was going to work properly before we more heavily promoted it. But you can tell them now. I understand last week we had someone call and sign up for the rate already.
Right. And I would say, Mark, you probably asked those employees, you didn't just put them on the rate, I guess. They opted in. But question back to the annual meeting. I've been looking at this based on what, the situation we're in. And I just wanted to make sure that I read the part in the bylaws about us having to have an annual meeting prior to July 1st, but then failure to hold an annual meeting through failure to obtain a quorum or for any other reason, i.e. pandemic, will not work a forfeiture or dissolution of the cooperative, nor shall such failure interfere with the regular conduct of business of the cooperative. So the way I read that, Levi, is we can just not have, we should have an annual meeting. If we don't, we're not in legal peril. Is that correct?
Levi, would you like to address legal peril?
I would love to address it in executive session.
Okay, all right.
Okay. And Liz, you referenced the bylaws earlier. You all had a discussion about when we assign the different board members to the different organizations. And although in our bylaws, we don't have that per se, we do have under Article 6, the election of officers, the timing of when the officers are supposed to be announced, elected. And I'll just read it to you, it's real short. The officers shall be elected by ballot, written or voice annually by and from the Board of Directors at the first meeting of the Board of Directors held after the annual meeting of members. If the election of the officers shall not be held at such meeting, such election shall be held as soon as conveniently may be. Each officer shall hold office until the first meeting of the Board of Directors following the next succeeding annual meeting of the members. And then it goes on. But anyway, so I think what's happened historically is probably we had this in our bylaws that you all selected the officers for the board, and at the same time went ahead and assigned the seats for the different organizations.
Right, and since we theoretically aren't going to be having an annual meeting, we should, I mean, there are all sorts of procedures that we need to think about. Like I think about next year's elections. I've noticed that on other co-ops websites, they are actually changing some of their election procedures so people don't have to come into the office to get a petition, and they don't have to actually go door to door to collect signatures. There's going to be, they have some sort of electronic means the members can sign the petitions. They're only going to accept mail ballots because they don't know if people are going to be able to meet in person at the annual meeting. So those are all things that we might want to think about before we actually announce our election dates and whatnot in the fall, because we have that 145 days or whatever where we make the announcements. But getting those procedures in place, thinking about what might happen and how we can deal with it, we should probably start thinking about that soon.
Carl, did you have something?
Yeah. Rob, in regards to the equipment that you mentioned earlier, I know when we did Tom Cypher's farewell, Tri-State has equipment and came up and did all that, but have you checked with Tri-State to see if they have what we might need to pull this off? I assume that you want to buy the equipment for Mountain Park so we can have it in the future, but if Tri-State has it, I'm sure they would loan it to us temporarily, but have you asked them?
The answer is no. We haven't asked them to directly provide the equipment or come up and manage it for us to do this interactive meeting. We could, and we can check into that, and I assume we could just send an email to you all and let you know if that's a possibility or not.
But we did have a meeting, Rob and Chris and Joe and I believe Adam had a meeting with Tri-State, and they actually were the ones who provided us with the information on what type of equipment we would need, because they obviously do this much more frequently than we have in the past, and so we did talk with them about what we were attempting to do. But as Rob said, we didn't specifically ask them, do you have this and can we borrow it?
Well, if it's important to have that as a portion of the annual meeting, then I would suggest that you ask them and see if they will, and I can certainly put a word in too if necessary.
Well, it seems like there's a few issues we should really think about, because if it's like a Zoom call like this or similar, there's going to be some members who aren't actually going to be able to access it, whereas they would have been able to access an in-person meeting. And so I think we have to be thoughtful about providing access. Maybe it's a phone number in or whatever, but we have to be thoughtful on allowing all our members to access whatever we do. And I'm not sure we can pull that off in June, by June.
Anything else for Rob?
I was hearing from Rob is we probably can't pull that off in June. So we're not going to have an annual meeting per se.
Liz, I missed that was code for me to speak. We might be able to do a phone number. I'd have to consult with Joe, of course. But you're right. I think however we set this up, and especially if you look at who attends our annual meeting, are these folks that are apt to try, these different means, live streaming, calling in, Zoom calls, all these things. I don't know for sure, but my guess is some of them certainly wouldn't be able to do that. So they might miss, again, the only official order of business is approving those minutes. Levi would confirm that we have given notice of the annual meeting. But they would miss the Q&A basically, and that would be the other component. But I did notice, I think it was La Plata. They invited their members to submit questions, and they were going to answer some of them, I believe, on their website, and then some of them in the Colorado Country Life magazine. But to date, so far as I know, La Plata and Pooter, who've done some of this live streaming stuff in lieu of the official annual meeting with a quorum, have announced that, at least in La Plata or Pooter's case, that this is not an official annual meeting, but we are giving you an update on the co-op, and I think that's part of the consideration, right? Is access. It's some folks that tune in will love it, but those that aren't comfortable doing that or don't do that will feel like they've missed out.
Right. And I think that's where the having that piece in CCL will help, because that's where they're touched on. I think Scott and Rob, you should know that at the Green Power meeting, as we were talking about things, a number of members of the Green Power Committee said how much they will miss the annual meeting this year, that it was a really special thing for them. And they're really bummed they won't be able to see their friends and catch up with what the co-op's doing. And it was just a good event. So after years of, wrangling about the annual meeting, I thought you two might appreciate that they really value the annual meeting. So thanks for working on it, making it better.
Okay, anything else for Rob? All right, moving on. Dreaded bills for payment. Anybody got any questions on bills for payment? Dreaded.
None.
No questions?
Not spending any money.
All right, open board forum, associated board reports. Liz, you said you had a Green Power meeting? You're on mute. There you go.
We did have a Green Power board meeting, continue to talk about solar kills program. Green Power's behind that. They had a couple things that Chris will talk to Mark about, fully behind that, talking about transitioning down at timing of that, and then how rebates, the rebate amount might be changed, sort of what this means for Green Power's, what does the future look like? There's been a lot of planning. Once that, I would think in probably July, I will present what they're thinking about, and it involves, growing the program. It involves transitioning to helping more nonprofits, doing more sustainable projects. So I'll present all of that. So that's, that was the meeting.
Okay. Dick, you got anything?
Not a thing. The only thing I was telling him, we want to address that letter in support of Tri-State that we came out earlier.
I think we're gonna do that in new business, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what's, okay. No. Other than Western United sent out their financials and they had another record-breaking month, but I think that's based on what was already in the pipeline. Excuse me. They still have their backlog of orders of over $20 million. So they're not seeing any change as of the end of April in the demand for supplies from the co-ops. They see a decrease in demand from outside people, contractors that are doing the work. But as far as the co-ops are concerned, they're doing it, and they've increased their inventory so that there shouldn't be any problems with delivering what the different co-ops want. We have our meeting, I think it's the 28th, and it'll be an online meeting. Aside from that, it was just a financial report, and they had another great month. And their warehouse got their CO after 2 years, so they're actually moving into the new extension of their warehouse. That's it.
Barbara?
I think Mark sent out the newsletter from Tri-State in an email, and other than that, we had a telephone meeting and not much occurred, so I don't have a lot to report.
Okay. Mark put CRA notes in his report. I don't have too much to add to that either. I got a conference call tomorrow about the fall meeting, so I'll let you guys know how that plays out, but, yeah, kind of a fluid situation as far as what meetings are gonna go on here, so.
The energy forum?
Yeah, it would be the energy forum, so. It could be postponed or.
CARE has basically decided that they probably will not plan an auction for the fall meeting. Trying to ask people for donations right now is a little difficult, and a lot of times the stuff they have are visits to different, sites or different hotels, and none of them are open. So they basically decided that they're gonna forego that this time and try and do their auction at another point. They didn't know whether they do it in the winter or just wait until next fall. As far as CARE with the elections, just to tie on to that, there's not much going on, and there haven't been many requests for support for candidates. They've written some checks to both Democrat and Republican candidates. I can get the detailed information if people want it. Aside from that, everything seems to be on hold because right now, the state government's still in session. They're in a delay. So they still have X number of days that they could be open, and nobody knows how that's gonna work. So right now, as far as CARE's going on, they're not doing very much actively.
Question about CARE.
Yes.
Do they fund exclusively, or not exclusively, but primarily candidates, or do they lobby on issues, or is that more of a CREA thing?
CARE funds candidates based on the issues and their support for the co-ops. So in other words, if you have a co-op-centric bill coming before the legislature, they will support candidates that support their view of how the bill will either help or hinder the co-ops. And if there's more, when these things come up, I can get you in touch with our CARE legislative representative, and he can give you a little more information. But I can get the details of who they've supported so far. It hasn't been very much.
I had a question for Carl because I've been reading all the documents that Mark's been sending out. And I noticed in the tri-state press release, they had a statement saying that no co-ops were considering exiting tri-state. And, right now we know Kit Carson did, Delta Montrose is, La Plata and United are certainly considering it. But I know that other co-ops have asked for exit numbers, and I'm curious how many have asked. I mean, that seems to me something relevant to Mountain Parks Electric is to know just the state of, how many co-ops out there have asked for exit numbers. And I say exit numbers very broadly because I know that tri-state parses could parse words. So I mean, just how many are out there that have requested some information regarding exit from tri-state?
The only two that I'm aware of are Mountain Parks and Chance Briscoe's, what is
NRPPD. It's Nebraska, it's NRPPD is the name of the co-op.
Okay. Those are the only two that I'm aware of at this point that have asked for buyout numbers. La Plata and United keep telling Tri-State that they are not interested in exiting. They just want a number. So officially, United and La Plata have not asked for exit. And the only other two are what Mark referenced, Chance Briscoe and Mountain Parks.
I think there's at least one more
If
that could
there is,
discuss
I'm
an
not
executive
aware.
session.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious. That seems sort of relevant. And when I read that no one was considering it, I thought, I don't know if it's a little misleading to put that out. I mean, consideration is very broad. I mean, the term they used to me, was really broad. No one's considering this. I'm like, well,
Well, I don't know that asking for a number is consideration or not, so I guess they have to be formally asked for, that they want to withdraw before they elect to, or put it out publicly that these co-ops are interested in withdrawing.
that's not what they said. They didn't say there's no one interested in withdrawing. They said there's no one considering withdrawing, and considering is pretty broad to me.
Yeah, Tri-State doesn't know that.
Yeah.
They don't know what boards are doing in executive session without their Tri-State rep present. So
Right.
I'd agree with Liz.
And then my other question was that when I read the Tri-State press release and in some other documents, they said they've been very open and transparent in pursuing the FERC jurisdiction. And I don't remember seeing that in the Tri-State minutes or having it be reported to our board until last June. And I'm just curious when it came up. I mean, how long Tri-State has been pursuing this?
Well, since I've been on the Tri-State board, it came up probably 5 or 6 years ago, and nobody was interested at the time to be under federal government jurisdiction. But in the meantime, since that, with the New Mexico issue, with their PUC counterpart, costing Tri-State about $40 million because they had 3 protesters in New Mexico and they wouldn't accept the new rate. And then with Colorado coming on board, it's kind of manifested itself really quickly. I don't remember having a discussion in the boardroom until after it was brought up to join FERC. But a lot of that discussion is privy to the executive committee and not the full board. So that's about what I can tell you.
Okay.
So you weren't informed of something called Blue Sky 2 before June of last year?
I've never heard of Blue Sky 2 until the meeting here last week.
Thanks for that, Carl. That's helpful. I was curious, Mark, as we talk about the pros and cons of FERC jurisdiction, and there's been a lot of upset over the New Mexico cases. Would FERC have approved a tariff that didn't have a demand? I mean, it's had an average demand component. I mean, would FERC allow Tri-State to have done that? And then if Tri-State had done it, would they had to, and someone like New Mexico challenged it, would Tri-State have to go back and refund to various co-ops if FERC found that tariff was unfair? And then how would the distribution co-ops have handled that?
Well, I guess the first part of your question is anything is possible. So they would look at that. As to when Tri-State would file a tariff with FERC, it would most likely be set for a hearing. You would have people that would potentially intervene, and if you had, say, for instance, 3 New Mexico co-ops that disagreed with the tariff or an aspect of the tariff, they would intervene, and that would be part of the actual hearing process and the decision process for FERC. FERC, as with any other regulatory body, has the ability to allow the tariff to go into effect subject to refund. And so if Tri-State requested that and FERC allowed it, then it would go into effect. And then if the final decision was something other than what was requested, if it required a refund, then those Tri-State would have to refund to all of those that had charged that tariff. If it was a decision that was more than that, they can't go back and collect it. They just have to do that on a prospective basis.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have anything for open board forum? All right, let's take 5. See you in a few minutes.
11:12.
11:12.
I finally put the chat bar up so I can see what everyone's been chatting about.
Okay. Let's get back to it.
Old business.
Old business. Do we have any old business for us? All right, let's move to new business. We wanted to discuss.
The tri-state request. Okay, I sent to the board, the request from Tri-State, related to, a letter of support that they are requesting boards and or managers, sign to send to FERC, in support of their three filings that they have. The three filings that they currently have before FERC are the tariff, the DMEA settlement, and the contract termination payment methodology. And I hope that nobody thought that I was sending it out and recommending it. If I was asked, I would say that I would recommend that we not sign it because we're taking in the docket that we are intervening in a neutral position. And so to sign this letter would seem to contradict our neutral position in that docket, but the board, I think Kristen and Liz did respond to the email that I sent, and so I figured that we would have the discussion here, so.
I agree with what Mark said. I mean, if we are intervening in one area as neutral, it would seem, unless there's a reason, it would seem inappropriate to take a side in that same scenario, you know, because it is covering the same area of where there's disagreements between tri-state and co-ops. You know, if we're going to take a side, we take a side. If we're not, I would feel not taking a side, but I would let tri-state know the reason behind it. Not that we're just taking someone else's side, but we've entered into this as a neutral party until more information comes out. I don't know.
Carl, did you have anything on it?
I don't. I'm not gonna take a position one way or the other. I mean, I can understand Tri-State's position, being in 4 states and having one state regulate the rest of them. And, you know, Wyoming and Nebraska are basically the recipients of that, so. But I don't think that whether you sign this letter or not is gonna make a damn bit of difference to FERC in their ruling, so. I hadn't planned on signing anything.
Justin, did you have any?
I agree. Okay. No, I have the same. I thought we remain neutral. But I also appreciate the steps that the tri-state board and committees have made, you know, to appease different members for the most part.
Mark, did you have any thoughts on it? Take yourself off of mute. Mark, unmute yourself, Mark.
I don't know how to unmute myself. My controls are all screwed up here.
I got
Well,
you.
you're
Mark.
good now. We can hear you.
We've been meaning to tell you that.
I know. No, I like the neutral stance. I thought Dick's letter had until it affects Mountain Parks Electric. I think stay neutral like we decided.
Okay. Liz, Kristen, do you have anything else you wanted to add, or besides?
I've got one thing, Jeff. I would say, you know, it's too late for us to intervene, but we went through the contract committee process. We listened to a lot of the mark-to-market approach. But I thought one of the points that actually Northwest Rural Power District, Public Power District made was a good one, which is the contract termination payment methodology that Tri-State is using is based on future revenues and projections of future revenues. And there's an alternative way to do that, which is to really look at the stranded costs that Tri-State has has incurred on our behalf. And those are known. And they're not subject to a 30-year forecast guessing what the price of electricity will be in 2040 and how much we'll be using and how much every other member of Tri-State will be using. And if you look at that type of methodology, it's much more certain, and it really speaks to what Tri-State's obligations have, and what debt and liability Tri-State has taken on to serve our co-op, and for us to pay that in a fair, just, reasonable, and equitable manner. It seemed that approach to me would seem much more beneficial, not just to Mountain Parks, but all the Tri-State members. And so had we decided to intervene, I would have suggested that Mountain Parks recommend a different type of contract termination payment methodology that is less subject to sort of a black box with various assumptions, but is really based on the existing dollars. So that's my 2 cents.
Kristen, did you have anything?
Nothing more to add.
And I would say that if you have not had an opportunity to review the protest filings, that you can take a look at two. One, Liz mentioned NRPPD. They are opposing it on one set of facts or one set of points. Wheat Belt is the other one that you can look at. They are opposing it, but for a totally different view. I believe that they are very supportive of Tri-State, but their concern is that the methodology doesn't come up with the right number, and so it will shift costs to Wyoming and Nebraska that really should be borne by Colorado and New Mexico co-ops. So I think what you can see in just reading those two is that there are people on both sides of, they either support or don't support Tri-State in its effort, but they both disagree, or they both agree on the fact that the methodology as it's currently there doesn't do what everybody wants it to. And so I think that if you only want to read two things, and they're not that long, they're about 16 pages a piece, read those two because it'll give you kind of the flavor of both sides.
And there's no methodology that anybody's going to come up with that's going to please everybody, so.
Absolutely.
Mark, one of the things that I noticed in the filings was the note about privileged information. Is that mostly grid security issues? Or is it pricing and fuel costs and those type of issues?
The privileged information could be a number of things, and if you read through all of them, and I don't know that we've uploaded these two, one of the participants signed, had their attorneys, I believe it was, sign NDAs.
Right.
Because generally in a commission filing, whether it be before FERC or a state, there will be information that is filed by a party, and they will request confidential treatment of that information. Therefore, it doesn't become part of the public docket, and unless somebody signs an NDA, they don't get access to it. And sometimes, even if they sign an NDA, they won't get access to it. And so there are some things I think that were filed at this point, probably most likely by Tri-State, that they requested confidential treatment of. And in order to have access to those documents, you would need to sign an NDA.
And do you guys see a list of the topics that those confidential privileged documents touch on? So you would know to even be interested?
You can go back and review the filings that were made, and it will designate something that was filed and requested confidential treatment. Now, it is possible, and I've seen this happen at the state level, where a party files something and asks for confidential treatment. At some point, the commission needs to rule on whether or not they're going to give confidential treatment to it. And it can go both ways. Sometimes they will say, yes, you need the NDA. Sometimes they'll say no, and then it becomes public. So I don't think that FERC has gone through that step at this point. They're still gathering the stuff. Normally, that type of decision would be made once it's suspended into a docket, and so it's going to be set for hearing. And I don't believe that FERC is there yet on these particular filings that have been made by Tri-State.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I don't think, it sounds like anybody wants to sign that letter, so we won't be doing that.
Okay, but I will notify Tri-State that we won't be signing it. Actually, we have a call on Monday, so
okay.
I'll tell them on Monday.
Okay. Any other new business?
I had a question. Normally, when we do our patronage issuance, that's normally in line with our May meeting, our annual meeting. What is the timing on that? I was asked by someone about that.
If you recall at the last board meeting, the board authorized the payment, but then gave me discretion as to when we pay. And what we are looking at is going through some of the summer months of, obviously getting April, May, June, maybe July, and then making a decision on timing of payment in the, to where if we do recommend payment, it would be probably September, October.
We approved the payment, correct?
Yes.
And approved the amount.
Yes.
My question.
Well, you approved the amount. You didn't approve the payment. You gave me the authorization to determine the payment.
The reason somebody asked is some people are saying that would be nice at this point in time to have access to that money.
We talked about that issue last month.
Right, but the question is, are we that concerned about our collections? So if this came up again, that's why I was saying, because I told the person last month, that, with what's going on, they said, could you check again? And so that's what I'm doing.
Yes, and we are not, we are concerned with the collections at this point. What we have greater concern about is the amount of our cash that we currently have that would be utilized to pay those payments. And we want to ensure that we're being prudent in making decisions that, we don't pay the capital credits and then we can't pay Tri-State for the power that we're buying.
Yeah, Mark, do you mind if I read what Rob, you and I worked on the last couple of days that we sent out to everybody here at Mountain Parks?
Right, we did, and Stacy will read this, but we put together a very short talking point, and we are talking about putting out a press release related to this. So go ahead, Stacy.
Okay, it says can everybody hear me okay before I read it? Yeah, okay. Recently, the MPEI Board of Directors decided to delay the payment of this year's capital credit refunds. Some MPEI members may inquire about this delay. Following are the MPEI's official talking points. So this is what we say. As a not-for-profit electric provider, MPEI has very thin margins. We do this intentionally to sell our product, electricity, as close to at cost as possible. Normally, each year, Mountain Parks Electric returns capital credit payments in the spring. This year has been unusual due to the impacts of COVID-19. Since March, MPEI late payments, non-payments have increased drastically, putting a strain on our cash flow. MPEI has made the decision to delay the payment of capital credits for now. The delayed payment is helping us cover our operating expenses to continue providing electricity to the communities we serve. We hope this is a temporary delay and that we will be able to return capital credits later this year. So we can send that to you all just so you have it, but that was the official statement.
If you keep getting asked the question, putting this out gives them the answer.
And we put out yesterday a congratulations to some of the Mountain Park scholarship recipients. We thought about putting this out at the same time, but we figured one of them was going to get dropped, and so we figured that we would issue this press release probably Monday of next week, and hopefully the papers will pick it up. What we have found is that sometimes the papers will post our press releases and other times they will not. This is one we would really like them to print, but.
Okay.
And we will put the press release on our website for members to access as well.
Do we have a need for a Mountain Park Services meeting?
Stacy, do we need Mountain Park Services?
Nope. Okay. Sounds like we do have a need for an executive session. And do we have a list of topics for that?
What I have thus far was we're going to discuss the financial projections that was requested by Dick. Legal issues related to making policies public and specifically related to B14. The question from Carl about Dilly Dock and potential litigation related to that. And then legal peril related to having or not having an annual meeting.
Sounds good. Can somebody take it there?
Could I add one thing, confidential member business information?
Okay.
Got it. Second. Got a motion by Carl and a second by Justin. Any further discussion?
And one of the other ones, I think Stacy was gonna talk about confluence.
Yeah. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, we're there.
Okay, so for anybody that may be watching us on the YouTube live stream, we are going to go into executive session, and as such, we will stop the live stream. So Joe, give us the thumbs up when you are ready, having stopped the live stream.